Ezra, welcome back.
Back again. Like
Here
a
you
bad
are.
habit, some things turn up again.
Our second time guest.
Our second,
Yeah.
it seems like
The
we're just
second
recycling now.
Yeah.
What's going on with you, man?
Well, man, all kinds of stuff. We were running a good week of luck. We had 3 vehicles down out of 4 in our household. So that's been occupying my time.
Dad becomes a taxi.
Yep. No, Dad usually doesn't, because Dad gets up first, leaves, and doesn't come back. But yeah,
Good strategy.
somebody becomes a taxi, or cars are being moved around, or whatever. I threatened my daughter with driving the bus, but it turns out my wife 100% rode the bus to college.
Wait a minute, you have a bus?
No.
Oh, you mean to
I mean, like public transportation.
Okay, I got you.
threatened her with public transportation.
Yep.
And she is too good for public transportation. My wife sided with her and said she shouldn't. And I thought it would be like a broadening your horizons thing, but anyway, we're too good. Siegrist are too good for public transportation.
She's a Republican. She doesn't believe in government subsidizing public transportation.
Yeah. Have we ever life creeped enough to be like, I'm above the bus?
I don't know. I mean,
It probably was a luxury at one point. Yeah.
The bus was absolutely a luxury.
Like when my grandpa was growing up and he's talking about
trying to get a ride to
walking
Lowville.
uphill both ways to school and 7 feet of snow and carrying all of his books.
Yeah.
Probably before backpacks, who knows?
Yeah. Story. My grandpa said he got struck by lightning
every day on the way to school.
I don't know if it's true or not. I don't think he got struck by lightning. He said he got lightning struck close, and the soles of his shoes melted to the sidewalk.
Oh,
while he was walking uphill both ways in the snow.
It just happened to be winter 12 months out of the year.
Thunder snow.
Yeah, well, good, man. It's great to have you back. It's fun.
Thank you.
Feels like a lot's been going on since we had you on last time. We were talking about our upgraded camera resolution. Big deal.
You're making big progress.
Yeah, leaps and bounds.
The studio is studioing.
Yeah, that's it. No, but even more than that, like there's a lot going on in the world, and a lot of politics, especially. Most
made it through.
Yeah, it's over.
We all voted.
Did we?
Well, apparently.
That was you behind my shoulder watching me. Yes, I think we all have. I won't speak for Nick.
I voted.
Okay, we all voted.
Just didn't wear the sticker because not part of the tribe.
You didn't take a picture and then take a selfie with it and then post it on social media? Come on, man. That is what you have to do.
Did change my profile picture, though.
Yeah, so, man, what are your thoughts? I mean, big election, historic in a lot of ways.
To be perfectly honest, I am shocked at Trump. He pulled a winner. The winning the popular vote, and he got people out. He did good. It's not the outcome I would have wanted, but he did. He definitely performed and got people out. Kind of
Shocking, really, because especially after 2020's election, it was like we were waiting a week plus, trying to figure out when the votes were coming in, who was going to kind of pull away. And the reality is that it was, I think I heard 40,000 votes amongst like 3 states or 4 states that kind of decided 2020.
Okay.
So like Georgia was 10,000 or less. I know Wisconsin was like 5,000, somewhere in there. Very, very close. But that's pretty small number.
Florida sure flip-flopped. I mean, it's not close anymore in Florida.
No.
That was a big, it's not a battleground state, really.
Nope. No, I think he won that by like...
I got a question.
Yeah. He won that by 13.1, which is huge. That's a big number to win by in Florida. 13.1%.
Well, that just means you're sending your racist grandparents down there.
Oh, of course.
Not you in general.
Not me personally.
So, okay, here's a good place to start. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I think that this election is a decent indication that as much voter fraud as people thought happened in 2020 maybe didn't happen, because Trump could never win again. He could never step foot in the office in the White House again. Like, I just don't see how. I don't see how voter fraud could have stopped the 2020 election, but not this election. So, but I do have a question. How is it that there are 12 million votes missing for Kamala Harris? Where are those 12 million people? Trump's turnout has been nearly identical to last year. They didn't turn Trump.
Okay, I saw 2 million less for Trump, 10 million less for Kamala.
Fair enough.
So roughly, that's pretty close for him, give or take. Where are they?
Where are those 10 million votes? We're missing. Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Where are they? Where's the 10 million vote difference? Isn't that interesting?
I mean, obviously, looking at it now, people weren't inspired to vote. I mean, I have
on a population base, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Maybe you could be right. It just, when you're talking massive numbers, it doesn't really usually work out.
You're going with, your question is, did Dominion do 10,000 votes?
I don't know.
Or 10 million?
I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the Dominion thing to really have a
All I know is Fox paid and they didn't really keep going, but to prove that. So I don't know.
I agree.
Like, if in our system right now, if there's a discrepancy somewhere, we have a way of handling that. And it is in the courts. Lawyers get their law out and go to being jerks and see what they can measure and what they can tack down and put a nail in and figure out. And I know there is a theory that there was fraud in a bunch of different things. And I mean, 10 million is, I'll actually tell you partly where I think the 10 million is. I didn't actually vote.
You lied to us.
I did. I lied to you. My opening line.
He was just trying to gauge us, I think. Son of a gun.
That day, and I went and got it and whatever else.
When the taxi breaks down, you don't go. Interestingly, though, New York performed better than it has in many elections. I think it was it 12 points, 14 points?
Yep.
I should have all this
closer.
data. If only I had it right here.
You're talking about flip-flopping.
Yeah, so New York.
It was 10 points different than last time.
Yeah, like 11.6.
Yeah.
Told you.
Which before, I do believe in 2020, it was more like 23.
I mean, I guess as I look at it, I thought people were excited to vote for Kamala, but it does not approach anything like Barack Obama in reality. Like somehow he inspired more.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't invite Cardi B to his rallies and have her twerk on stage, like meaningless, empty marketing. It was her campaign was 5 months of empty marketing.
You think that's?
I do.
It?
I do. I 100% think that. 100% think that her 5 months of campaigning, or however long it was, 4 months, was completely empty marketing.
107 days, I think.
107 days. That's 3 months. 4 months.
I mean,
3.5.
Okay. I'm fascinated by that because, like, all her policy positions were in the drop-down menu on the website. Like, it was no mystery.
Nobody goes to websites these days.
You're right. Nobody does. But
that's a website.
Exactly.
What people actually saw was the empty marketing on social media and on the news. I don't think anybody felt like her. I don't think enough people felt like she actually was bringing substance to the campaign. She famously didn't answer questions. Did not answer questions. It was insane. So not only did she not answer questions on her policies, but the marketing strategy that they took was just blast people with celebrities and clips and sound bites with no substance whatsoever. Meaningless marketing. Yeah. It didn't catch. It didn't inspire people. Maybe that's where the 10 million votes went. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't enough to win.
10 million's a lot though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But regardless, it was enough to not win. It was enough to lose.
Yeah.
And it was enough to lose by 5 million.
Yeah.
And she did that no problem.
Yep.
I don't think we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't even speculate. I think there's some pretty good soul searching about what it means. The other thing I'll just throw out there right now, in developed nations worldwide, the populations aren't happy after COVID, and all of the incumbents are seeing a large negative dip. Just right, wrong, or indifferent people are not. And that's one thing I would have underestimated. I have not heard people specifically complain about COVID, but I know that's a large feeling in the population that whatever COVID was, people are done with it.
The Democrats didn't handle it well, so why should we? I think I feel like people largely forgot about COVID, in that Kamala didn't deserve a single vote. Hot take. But I think people forgot about it. How poorly that was handled, how people lost their livelihoods, they lost their income, lost everything, lost their businesses. If you're a business owner, like,
I think that's
I don't know how you can forgive that. What's that?
I think that's some of the pent up anger.
Well, at a minimum, some people obviously do feel that way, but at a minimum, can you blame the people that would not vote for another administration that was directly behind those decisions? I can't. Like, it's one big reason why I couldn't. Like, why the heck would I vote for the same administration after how they handled the COVID crisis? They ruin people's lives with their mandates and their shut this down, shut that down, go home. The economy's still in the crapper because of it. People still don't have their businesses back. Like, no way could I vote for those people again.
I would guess a 10-point swing. You would have those same feelings if Donald was in there during that time period, because it was messy, and he had it messy before he got out.
Yeah, you're right.
It was messy.
We'll never know just how many businesses a Donald Trump administration would close. We'll never know. We'll never know how many people lost their jobs and never got them back, how many people foreclosed on their homes because their income was taken away. We'll never know. You're right.
But it was no doubt a messy time, and I'm happy to see it in the rear view. Hopefully we don't have to do that again for a while.
Yeah. Well, Dems need something else to blame on Trump, so.
How much, I think the talking points, being the incumbent off of some. So I hear a lot of noise that, like, the economy is going terrible. And I think you both would feel that the economy is going terrible. But, like, what numbers do you have? Like, or what? Like, some of the numbers I see make it look like the economy is really not doing bad for where we were during COVID. And
so are you saying as a movement that happened after that, that's what the economy was to be blamed on, and it's recovered well enough since to not complain about it anymore?
I think you could still have some feelings about it, and those feelings would have some validness. I think we're way unemployment's ridiculously low right now, and the stock market's not exactly doing
ridiculously low compared to what, 2 years ago when it was really, 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 really high. And so we're just comparing. How does it compare to 10 years ago?
4% is low unemployment. Have you hired anybody, Nick? There are 25% of people are incompetent, and I wouldn't want them anywhere near me. So I don't know. Do you have a different number than that?
No.
Okay.
I just was curious if you were comparing it. Because what they do in their press conferences is they talk about how low unemployment was, and what they don't tell you is it's compared to how it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
or even more than that, they brag about the job growth from the press secretary's office or from the podium, when really it's the recovery of jobs lost during the later stages of COVID shutdowns and so on.
So do you think Donald's in trouble and he's going into a terrible economy now? And And
I've heard speculation that the economy is not going to get better.
okay,
That it will actually get worse before it gets better.
In what way?
Inflation's not going to get better right away. Interest rates aren't going to go down right away. That basically what I got. Anytime you shake up the economy with the way that these presidents go back and forth and do, it doesn't always have like an immediate benefit. That it takes time, and that people are going to be very disappointed if they don't realize that Trump isn't just going to like have a cure-all tomorrow.
Yeah,
or even next year. Yeah, a magic button. Yeah,
and that's an ongoing fight that always happens. And it's somewhat who you can pin with a fault of it, because this is a long-standing. Bill Clinton did this, and Bush did this, and
every administration comes in saying that they inherited a bad economy and left a good one, and then it's always the opposite for the opposing party. It never goes both ways.
Well, I mean, you can look at some long-term data there and make your assumptions of
which would be the right way to do it.
Look at there,
extrapolate it over a little bit longer term versus one.
Yeah, if you wanted to, but again, the parties have both moved far enough that I don't know what you'd be extrapolating because. The
landscape changes.
Flip-flopped,
yeah.
Okay, so I have some metrics, and I think that when you're talking about the economy, there are definitely numbers you can look at. A lot of people, maybe more left wing, would say the stock market, the jobs reports, except for the last one, unemployment, stuff like that. What I think American voters saw was energy increases, rent increases, grocery increases, stuff that impacts their wallet day to day. And that was a big driver for why they went out and voted the way they did.
Yeah.
So like I have Axios right here.
That's insanely misogynistic.
What? Why?
Energy and groceries?
Like having like real issues to vote on. That's misogynistic.
Oh, it is? Yeah, sorry. So 18.3% in food increase, 37.2% energy increase prices, 13.5% rent increase prices. And we know this. And if you look at what it costs now, somebody did an in-depth analysis. Maybe I can find it to pull it up, where you need to be making $23,000 more per year, which is an insane number to live how you were even pre-COVID. Now here's my thing.
What is your
COVID certainly plays a role. Like we have to understand that you can't print trillions and trillions of dollars, throw it out into the economy and expect it not to have ramifications down the road. Also, everything was shut down. So everything was backed up. Everything became more expensive. People were fleeing big cities. We saw this in Connecticut where there was no place to buy houses. So the market went through the roof and it's holding. It's not just coming down like everybody thought. So I'm not saying it's not nuanced, but when you look and you can compare it based on the last administration to this one, the big question is, are you better off during Trump or were you better off under Biden-Harris?
Yeah. I don't know if there's any differentiating points between either administration. You're both sitting here telling me you think these numbers would be different if Trump
Not what I said. No, not what I said. What I said was I think that
I don't think that.
Yeah, I think that what's happening is people are seeing those numbers in real time
and they want to
blaming
Biden
for it. And Harris and saying that's the reason. Now, let's also just be clear. There are some policy changes regarding energy, regarding the Inflation Reduction Act and different things, all the funding that we're sending overseas that also Americans look at and go like, I'm kind of struggling here to get by and make ends meet. We're sending 100 billion plus over to another country for something else. Why?
Yeah.
I said we don't know how bad it would be or how bad it would have been with Trump. That we'll never know, but maybe people want somebody else to give it a shot because they didn't go so well with what we got.
They do. But some of those things, I mean, I could drill down on energy some. Like, what do you guys want for energy?
Free.
I think the average person wants gas prices that aren't near $4 a gallon for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good start.
With inflation, I think $4 a gallon is the new normal. and Trump isn't going to touch that. He could mess with it a little bit, but the only way he can mess with that number much is bring in cheap foreign oil. Like if he goes and promises something to OPEC, plays some really good games, and they might play ball, but there's something in it for them. Energy is going to cost between 3 and 4, especially if you want that energy to come from the U.S., which I think is a good idea myself personally. I'm in favor of energy independence and not using cheap foreign oil and then getting stuck like Europe did because they were using cheap Russian oil. So that's just straight up, that's one of a plethora of reasons I could get into that I think Trump is blowing your skirt up and you like it.
Is that what's happening?
No, I hate to say it that way, but
all right. So look at that for me then.
Yeah, and
so why
under Donald?
Why is 4 years ago? You're saying it's not possible now. 4 years ago it was $2.26 a gallon on average.
Yeah, and
inflation hasn't gone up. Double.
American oil was hemorrhaging jobs.
Okay.
Like
in what regard? Do you mean because you think that we were a net importer at that time or a net exporter?
Once oil comes online, it's online. It doesn't, like, the net importer exporter doesn't change very fast.
And is that the differentiation between crude oil versus that's top line?
Just once the well is tapped and going, you don't need people, so you keep it going.
Okay.
Like it's online. You need some people, but it's the money's been spent.
Once it's going, it needs less people to operate.
To keep operating.
Okay.
I would maintain that Trump did some stuff with OPEC in there, and they figured it out and brought. I mean, those prices were good. Don't get me wrong, but at 226, American oil isn't drilling much. Like they idled right out. They're not trying to get tar sands. They're not fracking. The other thing is
because the valve is open. You're saying
it's too low. They're not going to keep investing money when it's that low. Like they're idling. They're taking the easy money. They're leaving it. They'll explore it later. They have their reserves. They know where they are, but they're not going to drill them. And then when the price gets to $70 a barrel, drilling starts happening and is profitable again. So I think $70 a barrel is a rough, good, balanced target. Granted, all markets go up and down and they overproduce and then underproduce. But
I think the biggest thing when I look at something like this is it does feel like 2008 is probably a little bit of an outlier with what happened that year.
Yep.
We have to talk about the housing crisis and the economy then. But I remember being in college during Obama's year. So it would have been more like President Obama, 2011, 12, 13, 14, living in Connecticut where we're at like $4 a gallon and wondering, why is that? And then when Trump comes in, I mean, you can see it obviously going way down there.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, how much of that is a result of whatever the policies were going on at the time. And why can't we keep those policies going all the time? That's my big thing. Because if we're going to say that we're going to be importing from some foreign country way more oil in order to get this number,
yeah.
I mean, that's not what the Trump camp would say. They would say they're going to start producing oil again at the same rates that they were there.
Yeah.
So apparently in 2020, Trump actually demanded in the Trump way probably that OPEC reduce their oil production.
Yep.
So was Trump big on American oil?
He was.
So is this his fault? How long does it? So when you make a deal with OPEC, how many years before you start to see gas prices go up? Do you think?
It can be fast, depending on how much they want to change.
Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah.
Maybe it was a 4-year negotiation. I don't know. But That is not an indicator.
That is also, supplies went crazy during COVID. Like everybody stayed home, nobody used anything. You could have bought oil for negative numbers in Texas.
That would make
you
sense.
Remember that time period?
Yep.
Like they would have given you oil for free at one hub in Texas
I think
if
I
you had
remember
storage.
that. Yeah.
But that was just when America shuts down.
Okay.
It creates a massive disruption because it's all sitting there. It's getting pumped, and boom.
Okay. So
what do we do?
Okay, we got 26. No, it was in 2020. It was the end of his presidency.
No.
He rigged it to make oil prices skyrocket so he could blame oil prices, high gas prices on Joe Biden.
You heard it here first.
The deal was in 2020. So he had record low in the last 10 years or whatever, gas prices. He tells OPEC to throttle down their oil production.
You know why?
America starts making more of their own oil.
American oil companies told him, we're losing our shirts and we're going to go bankrupt and the whole world market is wrecked.
Right.
You have to cut
So
production.
it's not his fault, but they'll say it's his fault, but it's not his fault because the gas prices were too low. Oil companies needed help.
They needed help.
Okay, that makes sense.
It was ridiculously low.
So then,
it's complicated.
So then, what is the negotiation that comes in through a Biden term that results in that?
Travel, yeah.
The economy's starting to come again. Once it goes low and things are offline, OPEC's okay. They all made but the 406 right there. They made record profits. Phillips and Phillips Conoco. I forget the names.
That's not surprising.
Took it to the bank. And the biggest profit a company ever made in a year, ever in the world. Anyway, so your profit making, it's due for a come down. They've been drilling like crazy. There's money to be made. The rigs are running. Things are going good. You know, Trump might luck right out and be able to negotiate something. Trump also, in the super low he played Russia against OPEC and had them fighting for the smaller nest egg, and he got it even artificially lower to the point where the company's called Uncle is where it kind of went to. Anyway, I'm only geeking out on this to say I hear a lot of kids, a lot of young men telling me that low prices of this low price, and I wouldn't ascribe much of the price of oil to the president at all,
except when they make a deal with OPEC and then our gas prices skyrocket.
Well, he had to make a deal with OPEC. He had to. They were going to bleed out.
I think that there's definitely a place to say that there has to be a profit incentive for a company in order to sustain itself.
And I'm saying that price is $4 to $3 and $70 a barrel.
Yeah, so if we want American oil production, you got to pay more.
Yeah.
Unless we can export.
And then we can move on to groceries.
Yeah, okay, but just to bring it full circle, I think that most people would look at that and maybe not understand some of the nuance of it. And
it's complicated.
It is more complicated. And I think every one of these issues is that way.
Yeah.
Like every issue is a little bit more complicated than the surface level.
Wait until you deport the immigrants and then see how your grocery prices do.
Yeah. It'll be it'll be like 50 years from now, we'll be telling our grandkids that we remember when gas prices were $4.06.
Yeah.
Dude, let's go back to 2001. 2002, that's the glory days, $1.39. Of course, what was the median income back then? Probably like $35,000 a year.
Yeah. It wasn't that. Yeah.
You want to talk groceries? Let's talk eggs.
Yeah, let's move on to that because we're just basically talking about where people felt it in the purse and what maybe that incentive was to get them out there and flip. And we're not talking like small flips. We're talking like in some
Big
states,
flips.
hundreds of thousands of registration increase for Republicans versus Democrats losing some.
Yeah.
Are these new voters? I think that what we saw literally just yesterday night, I mean, it was in the morning, early morning.
Yeah.
But I think what you saw there was...
Who would you attribute the win to versus...
Like, did Trump win or did Kamala lose?
No, I'm just saying what groups, like if you broke down black, Latino, white, men, women.
Oh, well, he got over 40% of Hispanic males.
Yep.
Yeah, correct.
He
Performed
Hispanic
extremely
males,
well with Hispanic
and
males.
women.
And
both
women.
went
Yep.
way higher. And I would maintain for my friends out there who are anti-immigrants that the Hispanic Latino vote is your best friend. They are.
To who? Sorry, I missed
To
that.
the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to move that much and they're in your camp. So quit freaking out about them coming. They're going to be okay. Anyway,
Is there a
you can
is
win
there a
their vote.
sustainability model there? Like, is there a is there a balancing point?
There's a balancing point.
Are you suggesting that a large portion of those votes were not legal and we should stop complaining about open borders?
I'm suggesting
They
that
do
they
not have
came
to be
from
related.
people who were Latino, and as a group, that group is not anti-American values.
So as long as they vote for Trump, we should be okay with them crossing the border illegally.
Well, all right. Let's talk about legal and law. There's a hang up on law. You guys would be further toward the statist side of things, that there's laws and we all have to obey them.
I'm a rule follower. It's my fault. My personality. I don't know. I need to be more a rebel.
Well,
a school
if you're
zone,
not a
yes.
rebel, you'll never have people in your basement when the bad guys show up.
Wait, say that again?
If you're not a rebel, you'll never have people in your basement when the bad guys are looking for them. Like,
Oh, you don't take chances. You don't.
no, you gotta, like, long before it's bad,
sense
Yeah,
of
yeah.
justice.
you were empathetic to people and wanted good for them and were willing to hide them or whatever.
You're talking about like Underground Railroad.
Underground Railroad, freedom, just shielding people.
Gotcha. I was like, what are you talking about?
You gotta follow.
I'm trying. I'm so trying.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We call those people sheepdogs. They protect the herd.
Back to the
There's a balance.
Back to the law. So I would argue that I would like orderliness around the border. I argue for open border because I believe helping people is not bad and being empathetic to people is good.
Yep. Can I push back a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. If we were to talk about wisdom, and if we were to talk about what may be killing people in the form of fentanyl, in the form of drugs pouring over, you can't do that with an open border.
I'll address that.
Sure.
We'll start from there.
Or who's coming and,
Yeah.
and
So what we have right now is a very porous border.
yeah.
And we are practicing what I would call a prohibition. And it's the worst kind of prohibition where it's not working at all. And the bad elements are getting rich, flaunting it. And we're not doing anything other than trying to make it more like a prison where we both know there's still drugs in prison, even though the walls are better than a border would be. So there's just like a balancing act too. So I would propose to the border that there are decent people who want to work, who are crossing illegally, and they are partnered with the crime to get across. And that is a big industry. They're paying them $10,000 to $20,000 to get across, and that's
the cartels
whether
and the
they
coyotes.
come across with fentanyl or not is probably, I assume.
Are you saying that sometimes these people, they are coming here to get a job, and their way of getting here is drug trafficking as well?
Drug trafficking on the side.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
if
they
you got
need
here
the
to
money.
get a job, then
They'll
a
make
cartel did it for you.
might as well
And
make
there
money
was,
while you're at it.
well, I don't think they are making money because they already owe the cartel.
Sure.
I think the cartel is making money and making money on those people.
Okay.
That would be my position. I don't.
Yeah. So not
I would
necessarily.
say Juan wants to work in America. He pays $15,000 to go across. The cartel says, "Fine, we'll take you with our coyote." And you're going to carry a backpack.
Yikes.
So essentially becoming a drug mule as well as paying the cartel.
Now, I would propose a couple different ideas to deal with this.
Don't say stay in Mexico. Don't say remain in Mexico.
To split the cartel from their money and their profit.
Okay.
And
wow, that seems easier said.
it's super easy. Make employers liable for undocumented immigrants in the tax code. You can call them in to the IRS and they'll split the money with you 50-50, 10,000 a whack, roll it in over 5 years, $500 a year fine the first year, running up to 10,000 after the 5th year.
You're a farmer, you're an ag person. What are the downstream effects of ruining the labor market for farmers?
Yeah.
Well, if you
that's
don't
what it
want
sounds
to
like that would do.
if you don't want to ruin that, then you just provide an exemption.
Dang it.
That they have to be documented, pay a share of taxes, and you make the farmer document them. Like, they can document them. It's not that.
Yeah.
None of this is hard. Nobody just wants to do it. They want to fight about it.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are not going to be okay
And
with
there's
that.
To document them or to.
It's just, one step away. To them, they're going to see it as one step away from giving away citizenship, giving them the right to vote. It's just incentivizing bringing crime over the border, incentivizing the drug problem. Like, it's not a perfect solution.
If it's documented and there is a legal, orderly way to come to the border and cross, then you're divorcing it from the crime and the drugs. And you will still have some crime, but only the crime that's endemic to stupid young men.
What rights do these folks have? Like, what's the difference between them and an American citizen?
Obviously, they're not going to receive Social Security. They're not going to receive the right to vote or be documented. I am very uncomfortable letting the farm or that business entity own the pass, because that seems a little like indentured servitude, slavery. Like, I feel like people need to be able to.
They should be free to move about the labor
from
market.
Employer.
Yep.
Only because the other tips toward ownership too much.
Yeah, it gets a little dicey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could get real deep in the weeds there of what the exact proportion of a worker visa entry. But there's no doubt you can see that it divorces it from crime. And that was the biggest failure of the alcohol prohibition, was we funded crime like we have never funded crime before.
Right.
And to be perfectly frank, we're losing the war on drugs. We're losing.
Yep.
And so I think there is a very humane argument to be made for a documentation program that I would tend to allow them to have some level of health care. Just, we're in America. We have enough money. If you break your leg while you're working here, I don't know.
So I still see one, and maybe there's an obvious solution that you're going to throw at me, but I still see one major problem with this plan. If they are going to pay a portion of taxes, if this is all going to be documented, the price of like farming expense still goes up, because you then need to pay them a fair wage. And that's what they're getting away with, is they're paying people way less than a fair wage.
And on top of that, you're also talking about sanctions for undocumenting, and then they have to pay fines for an undocumented person.
If
like, at what point is the farmer kind of like, not worth it for me?
And and it's especially, so what are they going to have to pay? Do you have to pay them state minimum wage? Like, when before their farmers aren't going to be happy about this, because if it's documented and if they're filing taxes where they have proof of income,
so they
have to pay. Are they going to have to pay them the same as if California's got a $20 an hour minimum wage? All of a sudden, do these, whatever you're calling it, these folks have to get paid $20 an hour instead of the 10 before?
I would maintain that there is no low wage nobody's getting paid in America $2 an hour or $10 an hour.
So why are we so afraid of losing?
I don't know.
The labor market in the agriculture industry.
Because we can't get anybody. Nobody's going to milk cows.
Okay.
My son isn't going to milk cows. My son isn't going to go pick freaking strawberries all day long. I mean, I don't know. So they are being paid better than you think.
Okay.
And I actually would tell young people, the Mexican deal is not a bad deal. If your boss pays for your house and pays for your heating and pays you $15 an hour plus overtime over 40 or 60, New York has instituted some overtime for ag workers. And the unwritten rule of illegal workers in the industry, in industries, especially ag, has always been, if you pay the employer side taxes, you will be left alone. So most
like under the table deal, kind of just unwritten rule,
gray rule, because this is so big. We're talking about 10 million people.
Who are they writing that check to if they have nothing on file for all of this?
Oh, they have things on file. They have bogus
names, date of birth,
date of birth, and social security number. They all have a social security number. You might have 5 that have the same social security number, but you're paying taxes on a social security number.
Wow, that's nuts.
Would you be able to use that information enough to register to vote? If you came and said, here's my tax return, here is my social security number, in air quotes.
So
I would like to register to vote. I live at this address. Do you think that would be able to get through? It's 3 forms.
If you had good enough English, possibly, but states have done studies. They took it apart hard in Georgia and only found 2 cases of undocumented workers
who voted.
So it's not widespread. I'm not saying it's not possible or not that it doesn't happen. I'm just saying, like, the boogeyman that you hear of,
right?
The illegals are changing the election.
There's no
straight
evidence.
Malarkey.
That was a lot of people's number one fear with losing this election, is that if the Democrats won, there would never be an election ever again, because they would legalize undocumented voting.
There is, okay.
Which is what you're saying doesn't exist.
But we're also talking about, there's 2 or 3 different things I should differentiate from. There's undocumented workers. Then there is asylum seekers. The people you hear about in hotels getting money and not working are asylum seekers. And they are here, and there is a lot of them. And that system is wide open, and it is. So a lot of them right now would be coming from Venezuela. Venezuela is a mess. That's the one I know, so I'm going to speak on it. It was a mess. They got to the southern U.S. border, said people are going to kill me if I go home. And as any decent human being, when somebody says they're going to kill me and you're at my fence, you say, come in. Now, once they come in, they can't work. If they work, they blow their asylum case and they're out. So
because it looks like to the system that they're moving around the work visa process.
Yes. And as all bureaucracies in the American system, they're slow and incompetent. Sorry, my one guy I know who works in immigration
says that it's a fine running.
No, his spot is probably fine running and is good. But
yeah.
But, well, we're sorry. Anyway, the legal process of finishing that takes a long time.
Sure.
So we can't let you here and not put you somewhere and feed you and probably give you a phone. And then you have people who are here with a phone and nothing to do because they can't work.
And food vouchers and things to sustain
and
them.
Hotels and things to sustain them.
Sure.
And it's it's
a big problem.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And then it drags on for a year or 2.
Right.
Because
what's the expense? Like, what's the taxpayer expense?
High.
Yeah.
Now, I would maintain that the numbers I've seen said 5-year payback on an asylum seeker for the economy.
5 years.
Meaning they're negative.
Right. Yep.
For that many. So I am personally not against asylum seekers. I would make the one change that you need to work.
Yeah.
and that it's legal. And the mayor of New York asked for that because they were getting all the busloads from Texas.
Mayor Adams.
They didn't allow it.
He invented the trash can. Do you see that?
Yeah. What? Anyway, but different people, this is not a weird idea to float that you could work.
You could work the system out so that when people are coming in, it's not as easy as go hang out in a hotel. It's going to take a year before we can get to you. And then it's going to take 4 or 5 years before it's a net positive now for the United States. Right.
So those are kind of two very different groups. The true illegal crossed with a coyote, went straight to a farm, has a job. All of them I know work 40 to 80 hours a week. And most of them are young, ambitious men who are
good people trying to sustain
or
sustain their families, which is what
problems are systematic to all young men, not bad people looking to do bad things. They're just trying to make a better life. Now, I think even the asylum people are just trying to make a better life. Again, most of these are Latin American, so I don't think their values are anti-American. It's a big hole, though. But some of those things could be made more orderly, more calm, and maybe the flow can't be wide open.
You said open borders, so
it's very interesting.
You're on the hook now.
Like, I think to a lot of people, it's probably sounds like, let's just compromise because at this point, this is better than
the alternative.
Endless fighting over the border and with not a solution.
Well, not only that, but like sheer demonization in a lot of ways of people is a little not good. I think that I really like some of that approach for sure. I think that you have to secure the border in the ways that stops the flow of the drugs so easily through, that stops maybe some of the people who are malicious intended people. Okay, because we're naive if we think that's not happening. I mean, they just had the report out recently before the election, and how we can streamline them through a process that might get through the people who you were talking about before who want to come and work or seeking asylum who also should work at the same time. Why can't we do that?
I have a question that I have a question that is in line with that. How do you streamline the work visa process? You're getting, what are we getting? Not hundreds at that, maybe, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people that are coming to America each year seeking work. How do you streamline? And they're getting in illegally, and you're saying, let's make it legal. How do you streamline the work visa process? It's not easy. Like, just anybody who wants to come. If you say to everyone south of America, it is now legal to come work in America.
No, it's not going to be. I mean,
how many people are they turning away?
It's not going to be just legal. We're going to be turning somebody away.
Enough to keep the market, just enough to keep the labor market sufficient for the agriculture industry in America. Like, how many people are getting in?
Well, it's not even just that's a very small 2%. Look at what
2%
Latin labor does in America.
Fair enough. It's 2% of the American workforce. So they go and do other stuff. So how many people are turning away and how many people are getting through? Are a lot more people being turned away? Are they going to like it?
How many,
are they going to still want to get in illegally?
Not if you make a legal work visa that accounts for 90% of our demand, and you make or 70% of our demand, let's say a work visa that's 70%, you make it illegal and you make the employer liable on their taxes for undocumented immigrants. Like the employer won't hire you without the papers. Nobody's going to cross the border if there's not a job. They're crossing the border for a job.
So are you saying that that America now has to keep their finger on the pulse of just how many documented workers we need south of the border and let in just that right amount?
I'm saying that's a moving target that could be plus or minus 20%, and the American market could make up the slack there of labor. Like it is a moving target. Right now, we're not doing anything. We're just saying whoever is strong and brave enough to get across the border will let you come.
Right.
The other losers stay out.
Yeah, it's tough. the only, and I think this is a great idea, but again, the only difficult thing is that the government is now admitting and you're saying the unemployment is only 4% in America for the American citizens. But still, it's a tough thing for the American government to say, we're going to legalize people south of the border coming to work in America. They're going to take away jobs from American citizens.
They're going to pay their share and do the thing.
Yes.
And if you want a job, the jobs are set.
Yes, we know that. But the government is, as the spokesperson, trying to keep people in support of whatever party they support. It's a tough thing for them to say.
Especially for certain demographics. Like a lot of the black community, that's what they're saying, is our jobs are being taken, this and that. Like you go on Instagram, you can see reels, endless reels for people in those communities saying that. Yeah. How true that is.
And now their government betrays them officially and legalizes.
Exactly, yep.
Well,
and that's how you get 40% of black men voting for Trump. Partially.
Yeah.
Good idea is stifled by bad PR.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, at this point, we've been arguing about this since Ronald Reagan. Like, that's how incompetent our government is, and maybe people should be angry. And I personally don't think Donald Trump is going to solve it. He's just going to build a stupid wall and spend billions of dollars to do jack all on the wall. Like, the wall isn't going to address any of the issues we talked about here. Isn't. It might make it slightly harder to get the drugs across, but they'll still figure it out because there'll be lots of money to be made. Because the harder you make it to cross, the more profit-driven it is to cross.
Supply and demand.
Maybe I'm naive, but if in the event that the wall is actually finished to 100% completion, that does make it kind of difficult.
Canada is still there.
Yeah, but a lot more difficult.
If Byron's on the border patrol. You know Byron?
Yeah.
Well, Byron.
You're saying they circumvent the southern border and that they can keep the numbers up by going all the way around?
If you truly look at drug trade, they do cross the border. But all the good drug trade comes in on container ships into ports with the 20 million containers of stuff us Americans order every year. And that's actually where most of your drug trade is. Not the border accounts for some, but it's not.
Fact check time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that seems like what we know in business is that when there is an economical way of doing something, that is what will take over, and the old ways of doing things will fall quickly because it's not as profitable. So if what you're saying is true, why are we still saying that drugs are being taken across the border?
They are being
not economical.
They are taking across the border. I'm just saying, of the total flow of the trade, Trump has made an art form of demonizing people. And the dirty criminal, immigrant, illegal that's stealing your job and getting your kid high on fentanyl and killing them and murdering and is a rapist, possibly all of that language doesn't reflect reality and might be part of the reason I don't like the man.
And it's also part of why you have to be very careful of what, like, when you're talking data. Who was it that came out with the report? Was it the Border Patrol? Or was it Homeland Security that came out with the report like a month and a half ago? 13,000 murderers, whatever the numbers were. Yeah. But like realistically, that's not good. That's not good. But if there's 11 million, right?
That's still lower than our general population.
I would for sure agree with that. How much are we being gaslit on all of these issues both ways?
I mean, okay. My position would be that we're being gaslit by both sides, but one of these people has made a living out of gaslighting or portraying on TV that he is bombastic and whatever, and possibly you might have been sold a little bit of bill of goods about his 3-point energy groceries illegals.
So because of what he says and the way that he says it, we're talking about President Trump here.
Yeah.
Does it matter to you if it's not said and it's being done worse? We know Obama deported way more.
He did. It was amazing.
Yeah. So like, okay, so I guess what I'm saying is
Obama's time period, though, the farm workers I was around did not live in fear. During Trump's time period, the farm workers huddled on the farm and did not go out because the atmosphere was fear-driven.
You mean the undocumented workers?
The undocumented workers.
I thought you were talking about like the farmers that were out here like, huddling up for some reason.
No, the undocumented workers
got it.
Were in a state of fear. Like the trucks that bring around their food and stuff, their specialty Mexican foods, they were bringing around everything. And those families did not go to town if they could help it. Mm-hmm. Where now, under Biden, it was much freer and opener. They were kind of doing whatever they liked. Here in New York State, police weren't supposed to ask if you're documented or undocumented.
Okay.
There's
sanctuary
it's a little
state.
Weird sanctuary state.
Is it actually
right or wrong?
Is it actually sanctuary state?
Yeah.
I mean, if the New York State Police is being told not to look into it,
yeah,
essentially that's what you got.
And that would be the position I would understand is New York State Police are being told, you pull somebody over, you don't ask.
Is that from the governor's office or is that from the superintendent of the state police? I would assume it's from the governor.
I would assume it came to the superintendent of police.
Which got it from the governor. Yeah. Because ultimately that's who they answer to anyway. So it could be a political move.
Some of it is political moves, and who can figure that out?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing on the immigration is I don't see where I see where we need people and to make the products we have to keep on living the life we're living. Now, maybe we could go back to small family farms, but that's a whole different world.
So, United States Department of Justice, you ever heard of them?
Yep.
They came out with a report. I don't know what the date is on this. I probably should look at it. But they're saying like obviously most of the drugs are coming across the southern border from Mexico.
Okay.
And to a much lesser extent, Canada.
Okay.
So, but that also doesn't mean through land. So maritime is very small.
Okay.
So seizure. I should pull this up if you want. You want me to pull it up for you?
That would be fascinating.
See if I can figure it out.
So if the wall was completed, it would make it that much harder
or more expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't do anything, but okay. So here, I want to see if I can find a date on this. But that's a seal right there, my friend. 2000. This is 2010.
Department of Justice. They won't be around very much longer.
It's unclassified. Okay, so this is what I want to look at. Can I zoom in on this?
Man, in kilograms, what kind of communist stuff you got here?
2009. It is.
Oh man,
we have vetted this. So okay, so there you go. So that gives you kind of an idea. So basically, that blows out your container.
Yeah, it does.
Idea, but it doesn't mean that's not changed either. This is also from 2009, and I don't know if that's the most recent available.
Looks like they're ditching
the thing I read might have said port of entry, and I might have assumed that was maritime.
Okay, yeah, that is true. When you think port of entry, you do think that, yeah, for sure. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, but that definitely does indicate that it comes by land, not sea. Not that 20.
What's a kilo? Yeah. What's a kilo of fentanyl cost these days?
Who knows? I don't even
know how much money's in that land column.
Well, what's wrong with us is always makes more money than what's right with us.
So my question to you is:
that's a fact. Can you hold that question? Do you know what question you have? Just so I can reset the cameras and we can. Okay, keep an idea on that. On your question, we'll come back to that. Stuff changes. Like mobility changes. This is a long time ago. We're talking 15 years.
Insane.
15 years. It is from the DOJ, my friend.
Southwest.
I have proof of it right there.
Wow.
So yeah,
they're really good at getting it across.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of like if you look at this, you'd be like, okay, well, that should be maybe enough. There you go, right here. Look it down below.
Yep.
Here. Okay, so it does certainly look. Oh yeah, look at the tiny numbers. Northern border is like non-existent. That's because Byron's up there.
So much.
That's because Byron's up there from Washington State to
Marijuana
Maine.
is by far.
Well, and
And this is also like kind of pre-fentanyl epidemic.
yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, well, it's
Yeah,
2009.
so I would be interested to know
I
these
didn't see the 2009. The cocaine seemed high. I didn't see.
these numbers because that's a little bit more. We're losing about 120,000, 130,000 lives.
Is that how high we are on that?
Yep,
It's bad.
from drug overdose, and fentanyl is a big part of that, unfortunately. And that is some crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like 5 grams kill you.
Gone.
Yep. So, yeah, interesting.
People
So
are still in enough pain that that's an okay trade-off for not feeling anything.
I can't tell you how many times we Narcan people on a regular basis, the same person.
The same.
Yeah. So it's a big problem. And like you said, the war on drugs, not working. We've spent $1 trillion since 1974.
Yeah.
So it's not working. So I guess that goes to your other point of kind of like, oh, well, the government isn't good at anything they do, but we need to know exactly how many jobs we need.
He just said the tons of the prohibition idea. I would say I want to divorce the illegal people from the drug cartels. I would also love to divorce the marijuana trade from the drug cartels.
Yeah.
If all they had to make their living on was cocaine and fentanyl and ecstasy and speed,
Yep.
would just take their budget down to a level where maybe they wouldn't run all of Mexico.
Sure.
And
Yep. That's a good point.
I mean, that would be my starting position and
Start legalizing some of it.
And I don't even know if legalize is the right word.
Too late for that.
It is the right word?
It's too late for that.
Oh, it's too late?
Yeah, it's not. The train's already left the station.
Meaning it is legalized?
Marijuana is, yeah.
Oh.
You guys keep going. I'm just going to reset cameras.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No. But is that bad in your mind, or is it just divorce it from the drug trade and it's better?
That seems to be the best way historically to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just legalize it.
And I think that's kind of happening in
It's
real
the
time.
It's the same idea as well. It's the same concept of an idea that you're suggesting for the border. Just legalize it to some degree.
And I mean, I'm not saying everybody should get it everywhere, and I'm actually not saying that with immigration. It's not open border is what I want. I want order that reflects reality of the people we need.
Yep.
The
world doesn't remain stagnant. Progress, there are going to be decades and decades of progress. Like, we will not have the same laws. We do not have the same laws now as we had 100 years ago. Yep. And people cannot expect to have the same laws 100 years from now that we have now. And how do those laws change? Slowly, one at a time, decade by decade. Yep. And so you guys got to get used to some degree of, there's going to be some degree of, we're going to get more liberal in some ways and more strict in others. And you can't expect to remain the same. You just can't.
Yeah.
Marijuana is going to get legalized. You can't cry over it.
But the promise was mass deportations. Like, that is the sale. And I'm calling no way. Like, he's not going to do it. He might tighten the border some. I would expect asylum to change quite a bit. Like, I don't think you're going to get across for asylum.
Okay.
The same way that they have been.
He probably institutes remain in Mexico again.
Something along those lines. But
what do you think about that? You okay with that? Mexico a good step in the right direction versus Venezuela, if they can keep them there?
I mean, Mexico's doing pretty good. Like, Mexico's come a long way.
They're in a precarious position, aren't they?
They're coming along. I mean, they're doing well, and their manufacturing is going off. And in the theory of the world gameplay, would I rather do business with a Chinese dude or a Mexican? I would rather do business with Mexico because they're close and they're not anti our values at all. Like, they mirror our values.
Yeah.
I mean, if they didn't mirror our values, we wouldn't have Texas at this point. So
that's interesting. Do you think, do you know at all, does Mexico face a lot of these same issues, and are they more welcoming? Or are they just skipping right through Mexico trying to get to America? Or do you think that people are that Mexico is also just as much a destination?
Okay. 50 years ago, like the story of, so everybody says, well, my grandparents did it legally. There wasn't a system 60 years ago. There was Ellis Island.
Yeah, and you wrote your name on it, okay? That's a system.
Yep. No, I mean, Ellis Island was like, if you're visibly sick with scarlet fever, you can't come in. Like, that was there was a little bit of screening. We're going to try and write down your name and misspell it horribly and change it. Okay. But,
okay, yeah.
It was not much.
We didn't have computers.
It's
the biggest reason.
And there were plenty of, you didn't get, like if you came to Canada and then came to the U.S., it's not like anybody was roaming around to throw you out. So as a country.
Except for Byron.
As a country, we've had amnesty like 4 times in our past where we said, as of this census count,
everybody's in.
Anybody we count is on the team, and you're here.
Man, interesting.
Isn't that? So this whole idea, like your grandparents did it legally, you just don't know. They might have.
Yeah, or more recent generations, maybe like your parents. Maybe that's a little different.
Yeah, since
second generation, even second generation immigrants, that'd be their parents. We're talking even 70s, 80s.
Yes. And there would have been a system in place then that, and that was vastly different. But I'm just saying, if you look back at the creation of America, at a certain point, if you were here, you were in. Yeah. We counted you.
Yep.
Now, granted, if you were black, you might not have counted or some other things there for a while.
Because of the great past of the U.S.
They did count them as a third. It was a weird thing because they wanted them for population, so their vote had, or so their state had power, but they wouldn't let them vote. It was the mental gymnastics you get when you dehumanize people is wild.
Yeah, well, they just counted them the way that they counted since they passed that law after slavery, right?
Yep. Oh, 3/5? No, that was a 3/5 compromise. The cross. Let me see here. Any person who is not free would be counted as 3/5 of a free individual.
That was so that landowners had more voting power.
Yep.
They could count each one as 3/5 of a vote.
Well, which just goes. So the South had more.
Yes.
That was to figure the representation of the North versus the South and who was in Congress.
Isn't it interesting? Don't want to talk about it. Side note.
Let's talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. He just goes right into it.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that they got to use this is horrendous, awful. They got to use people who did not have any rights whatsoever as 3/5 of a vote, each and every one of them.
And was that for delegation? Is that what you're talking about? Like population
for delegation for representation at the House.
Better representation for people who did not receive it.
Unbelievable.
What a backwards.
That was our history.
Whose idea was that? That's crazy.
Okay, so anyways, all right, let's move. Do you want to keep on? Do you want to keep on the economy side of it? Like we talked a little bit about groceries. You want to talk about that?
Oh,
how much do eggs cost right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how much is that? Okay, but how much is that?
Rent is
too dang high.
How much is that? Can you lay at the feet of the current administration? That's kind of the big thing. This election was a referendum on self-correcting, whatever that looks like for people.
Yeah.
The past 3.5 years.
It is.
Clearly, there's no other way to look at it. There's no way to look at the demographics, the complete blowout of the election, which has been a long time since we've seen that kind of a turn.
Yep.
And they only had 2 choices.
Yes. The groceries are higher. I would have a very different take on the groceries because as Americans, our country has had a policy to keep food as low as possible. And the percentage of that total that goes to the total dollar that goes to the farmer is only like 9 cents of a dollar spent in the grocery store goes to a farmer. So Yeah. Right now, the farm gate price of things, beef is doing okay right now as far as what the farmer's getting paid. Everybody else is getting slaughtered. And this is another point. Trump talked about the groceries, but he never talks about corporate profits. Did you hear him say anything about corporate profits? Not a word. And of any of these things, in the last 3 years, the corporate profit side, company's been doing good. And how do we not talk about that? Like, grocery stores, old PNC or Tops or, whoever.
Yeah, you just aged yourself big time right there.
Yeah.
PNC? Wow.
Old Wegmans clan. So in my candidate, I was definitely looking for them to address total corporate profit.
Okay.
There has to be some adjustment or clawback there, or some change in the system. And I don't think that change is going to come from Trump.
So you're saying food prices should be lower?
Yeah, because
the cost hasn't gone up on the
production side,
producer side of things.
manufacturing.
Yeah.
You're saying companies are overcharging for food.
I am saying they're getting rich. Middlemen and grocery stores. Yeah.
But is that a response from the economic station?
They figured out they could do it during
Exactly.
COVID.
That's what I'm wondering.
They figured out we got them.
Yeah, we're just going to keep it right here.
Just like, okay, you guys remember back to when California was having those rolling blackouts, and they got those recordings of them two dudes talking to each other? Like, do you remember them?
I remember the blackouts, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, so they got two guys planning to shut down a power plant during the rolling blackouts. During blackout, like it was rolling blackouts, and they were going to shut down a power plant to spike the supply price, the short-term supply price, and they were going to shut it down. Screw grandma, like vile language of we're going to take. Doesn't matter, these little people, we're going to screw them and we're going to take their money. And yeah, you should look it up. California rolling blackouts, like that viral clip is the essence of corporate greed in America today. And once they figure out they can take it,
okay,
they just keep taking it.
So that actually kind of answers my question. So I'm looking at a graph right now, and I won't pull it up just because it's quick. Food price inflation under Carter was 32%, then 10 under Reagan, 13 under GHW, 8% under Clinton, 7 under GW, 5 under Obama, or 5 under Trump also, and then 20 under Biden. Yep. So it's like bang, bang. And you're saying that it's because during COVID, everything was inflated. And after COVID was done, corporate greed was like, we're just going to keep the prices here now and make an insane amount of profits. Okay.
I mean, I think that's
so then if that's true, not really fair to put it at the feet of Biden. I mean, or are there policy decisions?
There are some policy
regulation. I know that's a hard word to get through because like nobody likes to say regulation. And
yeah, in a capitalist society, which we tell ourselves we are, but we're like, yeah, I don't know. The profit motive is very interesting to me in that it's the best system we've come up with, but without, in my view, without Christian morals to temper it. There's some things I just won't do to make money.
It brings out the worst side of humanity.
There's a negative side. And we don't have as we're post-Christian as a nation, we don't have a very good framework to curb the worst of capitalism. Because the worst was, your grandma calls you and says, what are you doing? Or, somebody
grab you by the ear.
Somebody had authority in your life and was like, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that.
There are laws against price gouging, and it seems like they're not enforced.
Well, they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Especially in crisis. Like
isn't this what happened with Standard Oil? Isn't this exactly what happened? No company is allowed to have more than 49% of market share.
Amazon.
Right.
Or
so
Apple.
I was gonna address the fact that we do not address monopolies in this country like we used to at all.
So
but that's different than price
Trump
gouging.
will bring that back?
I don't
think anybody's going to do that.
I don't think that people.
Calm down.
I would like.
As long if it gets my 2-day shipping back, I don't care what he does.
You can make as much. Oh, I saw a video today of Bezos walking next to a guy. Did you see this on TikTok?
I didn't.
I think it's TikTok, Instagram. Walking by a worker at one of his plants.
Yeah.
And next to his worker, it had his value going up by second.
Yeah.
And it had Bezos's going up by second.
Yeah.
And in like a 30-second interaction, I think the guy had made somewhere around 70 cents and Bezos had made like 7,000 or 8,000. Now, you can look at that two ways. You can look at that as corporate greed, or you can look at that as a guy who took all the risk, who now is reaping the benefit of all of his risk and employing tens of thousands. I don't know how many people Amazon employs, but so it's interesting what you're saying. The upper limit is there.
Risk reward to the top end on that is getting a little funky.
Yeah,
like,
the corporate.
I'm not resenting you if you make 300,000, but that man would go broke picking up $100 bills because he can't bend over to pick it up.
A big problem is that this inflated corporate profits are not being passed down for better wages either. Like that is a large part of that problem.
Sure, and it's why wage increases don't out earn inflation, and that's a problem.
Well, that's a big issue, and it continues to get worse. And how bad can it be before we have a meltdown? Mm-hmm. And that's been a long-standing question.
Yeah,
but it's not getting any better. My suspicion is you probably can't have it get better till there's at least a threat of violence.
That's a scary place to be.
I
mean, think that's kind of what was going on with Occupy Wall Street? People were getting a little nervous up in those.
The commonalities between Occupy Wall Street and between Trump winning,
pretty good, pretty comparable.
If somebody can figure out how to synthesize that into a party, they're going to win bigger
every time
than Trump ever even thought about.
Interesting.
I don't know how you would synthesize that because both of them sides would swear that they hate each other. But
with the Occupy Wall Street, is that what you saw? It seemed more. I mean, it was a long time ago, but it seemed like it started to become coalitions between some of the right side factions and the left side factions meeting together and being like, time to make some change. And then all of a sudden, race got thrown into the media every single day, and we all divided ourselves against it and started hating each other for no reason. But
there was
engineered.
I will pull that graph up right now.
There was commonality there.
Sure.
I'm just saying if somebody can synthesize that with whatever Trumpism is,
the anti-establishment movement.
I would hope that doesn't come with violence. The anti-immigrant.
Oh, okay.
See, that's another question I guess I'd have for you guys is...
This is my show. You can't ask me questions.
We ask you the questions.
In this atmosphere we're in, as we look at Trump's words, I personally would be deeply uncomfortable with a lot of his language and would use the word fascist and or authoritarian. I think both of you would find that semi-laughable and wouldn't see him as authoritarian at all. And my question is a theoretical one. What do you think an authoritarian would do? Where do you have a red line you've thought about that
circumvents our legislative system to do whatever they wanted, which there is, correct me if I'm wrong, no proof of that happening in his first term of president.
Like, he's been president before. Why are we nervous for this when he was president before? And this, people are not going to like this. They're going to say that there was evidence for it. That's fine. I can't tell you right now off the top of my head. If there was, I couldn't tell you what it was, and I'll admit that. But the good things that he says about, he has no interest in repealing anything as far as gay rights go, which is, he has no interest in repealing. He has no interest in the federal government having their hand in abortion rights. He has no interest in. He's for IVF. He's for essentially free IVF. Like, I just don't think. I don't think that I don't think that the good outweighs the bad, but I don't think the bad outweighs the good either. I don't know that he has, having been president for 4 years, earned the reputation of being an authoritarian. I think that's because the way that he speaks, it can come across that way. But he now has a record, and the record shows he doesn't act that way.
I would say his demand for loyalty is borderline at best.
One thing that I'm really interested to see, I have a marker for whether I think that people who voted for Trump should regret the next 4 years or not. Like, if they regret voting for Trump, I have a single marker. All of the people that he brought on board, they're supposedly his cabinet members, and all the people he wants to put in charge of these agencies, like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, I would like my marker for will people regret voting for Trump, or should they regret voting for Trump, will be how many of them last. If he starts firing people like RFK, you know how he got into like conflict with people all the time in the first one? Like, he was firing this guy, firing that guy, and very few people made it.
Interesting.
If that happens this time as well, I think people would have a good reason to regret voting for Trump. If he can't keep the people that he said around him that he's supposed to trust to make, because a lot of people vote for Trump, it or not, a lot of people vote for Trump for what? The people
Trump's
that he's
team.
surrounding himself with,
many
right?
times.
Right.
It's his team I'm voting for.
None of them make it. If none of them make it, maybe they were right.
How about you, Brock? How do you view that?
Okay, so when I look at Trump, I think a lot of what Nick is saying is right. I think we do have 4 years to gauge on. I think that the way that he was persecuted during those 4 years and still to this day was unprecedented, and that you have to look at him a little bit through that lens in fairness. So, Russia collusion, I could go on and on, but where would it become too much for me? I was on duty on January 6th. Didn't like that. Thought that it was a problem. There's a lot of discussion on his involvement and what that means. I don't think that people in general should be looking to support somebody for loyalty's sake. That seems foolish.
Okay.
I would be very quick to, a lot of stuff about Trump I don't like. A lot of stuff he says, a lot of ways he carries himself, whatever. A lot of that really probably isn't up for me to judge.
Yeah, he's by no means a good representation of the Christian population. Yeah. Like, we all agree on that.
Right. So I think that here's my thing. I think a lot of people are probably in my same frame of mind, where if something were to happen where he's like, forget the Constitution, forget the 3 branches of government, I think that would be a losing battle for him instantaneously. Right. I think his whole entire thing falls apart. I also don't see that really happening. I know that a lot of people do. I don't see it.
It's honestly, it's like turning it back around on you. You say that there seems to be an authoritarian stamp on. You honestly think that he could do anything and it would work? No way. It would get shut down so fast.
I mean, it did.
How so?
Well, his vice president didn't bow to pressure and did what he was supposed to do. I do think there's a lot of that in the American system.
To play devil's advocate, was there a little bit of waiting for the lawsuits to go through, and it was a request to just hold off I've got lawsuits filed. There needs to be a judicial process here. In fairness,
I would say
is that a good excuse?
Between the two men, I would judge one of them to be more moral than the others, and I would take his word.
Yeah, I'm just saying
over the others.
It's possible that there is on Trump's end, there may not have been a, hey, I just need to come out and say this. Don't do it. I'm trying to take over. And more of a, I have a loophole in the system here where I've filed lawsuits for voter fraud. Let's see what happens there. Can you hold off on?
Which is not unprecedented. It's not unprecedented.
It's a benefit of the doubt that he is trying to follow some kind of, again, the judicial
process.
Right. I don't know that that's true, but like, you could say that.
Onto that backdrop just for a second. When you look at the way that state legislatures changed election laws, when you look at some of the other stuff behind the scenes that happened, a lot of his cases were dismissed on standing. That's important. Mm-hmm. It's not like they went to trial. It's not like stuff got looked into in depth. It didn't happen. That needs to be said. Second of all, when you look at extending deadlines and excessive mail-in ballots and all these things that came along with COVID, I don't think it's unreasonable to be like, we should probably look into this before we just push it all through and go away with it. On the other hand, I agree with you. There are rules. Like, there's a process. And to Nick's point, that is the process. How much of what was going on behind the scenes we actually know about, how much of the nefarious actions there may have been, we don't know. And I don't know if we ever will. So I think that most people look at January 6th, and most Democrats especially, that's their number one thing. And that's the number one thing that they point at when they want to call him a fascist and an authoritarian and a dictator.
Yeah, that he finally tried it.
He tried to overthrow the government. He sent all of his supporters into the Capitol, which that's a whole nother separate thing. And how much of it is, do you think that if Trump would have came out that day and said, let's go take up arms, take over the country?
I think that crowd would have gone with him.
Yeah, but do you think America at large? Look at, like, I'm not staunch either way. I'm actually pretty much in the middle. And I looked at that.
Okay, there's different level. I mean, okay. Historically, I would make the argument that most bad people start with bad words. When their bad words don't get challenged, they move on to small bad actions. When their bad small actions don't get challenged, next thing you know, Belgium isn't there anymore.
Do you honestly think that even if there was the
ego on that man cannot be compared.
Right. But even if there was an actual call to arms specifically stated, let's go take back America, do you really think that anything would have come of that? Now, I will get, like, people would have died. Aside, I don't mean it any kind of way, but aside from that, like any governmental change, would that have been a successful movement? It's hard to believe.
At this current time, I would like to think that our police and our military are very resistant to
tyranny.
Are you going to say hurting American citizens?
Hurting American citizens.
Okay.
So
you don't think they would have enforced the law in that moment?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying whether Trump is capable of executing it. I would personally judge his character as being capable of it, and would therefore, like, if you think I'm anti-Trump, I am. I would judge his character of being capable of it. Mm-hmm. Now,
any reason is that based in reality?
Reality.
Any reason to believe that it's true? Is there any evidence that he deserves that judgment? Because that is the question. And if he should never step foot in the White House again, he's a fascist authoritarian. What has he done?
I would say he has leanings towards that. Being a fascist or authoritarian is not what I'm actually accusing him of. I am accusing him of
fascistic tendencies.
Fascistic.
of being an authoritarian leader who is demanding loyalty from everyone who is on his team, who cannot hear a voice that is not, who needs his ego coddled, who 18-year-old girls in Miss America were told, if Trump shows up, go make a big deal out of him. He loves that.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, how many Trump is one man, how many on the left came out and said, if you vote for Donald Trump, you are anti-American? Is that not the same authoritarian speech? Is that not the same demanding loyalty? Does that not make the other half angry as well?
Both sides are both in trying to motivate people to show up to vote. Mm-hmm. Both sides are 100% guilty of using whatever language they think will punch through to make people care enough to perform. Kamala, I would say empirically, didn't do as good a job with that as Trump, which means he's worse. Anyway,
I don't know.
Sorry.
I don't know. Hold on.
Was maybe
Hold
a little
on.
mean.
Yeah. I don't think that people looked at her and saw competency at all. I think they saw her.
I know that.
And saw word salad.
Didn't you see that?
Competency?
Girl is
Talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But if she was answering questions, they weren't showing.
Yeah.
How many times do people have to
but
hear her
your
say,
anti-competency
I grew up in a middle class...
is that she failed to answer questions in the public sphere.
Partially, but also that she was foisted upon Democrats, for one thing. She didn't receive a single vote. She was brought onto the vice presidency after a terrible presidential candidacy. We're talking less than 1%, didn't make it to Iowa caucuses. Every appointment that she had before that was run against Democrats. She never had to actually face some serious opposition. Then you look at what she did. She was told to be the border czar. That's a big problem for her. These are policy reasons. Like, I can have my own reasons for thinking that when she's talking to an interviewer and just saying the same thing over and again.
All I'm saying is, just so you're aware, my daughter will double down and see your approach to Kamala as very anti-women. I mean, straight up, like ready to throw hands.
Why? What's the connection?
Because she saw a woman who is as college educated as she could be, who has a double PhD, and your position both is that she used word salad and was the border czar and didn't have competency. And my daughter's position is,
she's a woman.
Woman, no, who is black, who is as educated as she could be. You didn't hear her say the words, and you judge her as incompetent.
Wrong.
So what
Hold on.
possible way could my daughter ever be competent enough you could hear her?
At what point did I say because she's a woman she's incompetent? Didn't happen.
Yeah.
At what point did I say because she's black she's incompetent? Didn't happen.
This is potentially the
I'm
heart.
not actually. I probably should back. I'm not actually saying that you hold those positions. I am saying that the optics of it, if you ask her how she feels about what she saw from the Republican side talking about Kamala, you would say she is, and this is the optic problem of this, but I'm just saying, as your daughters get older, there's some weird questions in there.
We'll see. You could be right. I don't want to shirk the idea that you could be right because, I can't tell the future. But if the argument is, look at her qualifications, okay. First of all, Brock's right. It has nothing to do with being a woman. The argument went right to qualifications.
Yep.
And had nothing to do with being a woman. It started that way, and then it quickly turned to college educated, this and that. Here's the thing. This is like potentially the hardest job in the world. No one gives a rip about your degree. How often do we see that in life? It doesn't matter that you graduated college. You need to have skills in the workforce. She is no different. So what? She's a college educated woman. every president is college educated. You have to be able to showcase your skills and convince people that you can lead the country. And she did not do that despite being college educated. Has nothing to do with it. Is that a fair argument?
I can see.
But I don't even know what we're arguing about. We're not arguing. But because is it about being college educated or is it about being a woman?
It is partly about being a woman. I mean, it is. The woman is
who are
probably
you talking to, though? Are you talking to shadows of men? I mean, that is what's going around mainstream media right now, is that black men don't want to see a woman, which, by the way, is complete conjecture. Because that doesn't seem fair to me.
I am saying, okay, the guy on the other side was a freaking what? Well, he did it for 4 years. He did a good job for 4 years.
People feel like he did.
Okay.
Yeah. And he wasn't handpicked. And another thing that we're not talking
most of the conjecture I've brought here and kind of said would say that isn't the view my daughter has, that he did a good job for 4 years.
Do you? Okay. Here's
it's a framework to judge your perspective between the two people.
Right, and if I could,
which wasn't the argument we were making.
No, I am sitting here trying to make sense of it, because I am also speaking, just saying, I am trying to rationalize. See, here's the thing. In dealing with my wife and in going through life, you both would say everything needs to make sense and we should be logical about everything. I'm paraphrasing here.
Generalizing.
But the logic is only a portion of the decision-making process.
Agreed.
And I have only ever gone forward on decisions against my wife's feelings to my own detriment. And I am quite willing to say my daughter's feelings have value. I think your daughter's feelings have value. And when we have this argument about qualifications, and it only can be logical. Logic is the only metric we're willing to weigh that by.
Okay, now we're getting into a little bit of like facts over feelings. So I agree that feelings have value, but isn't there a line?
Yeah.
If I could
there's
prove-
got to be, and I am not saying my daughter's line has to trump. I am saying in your talk down to Kamala, I probably said that wrong.
I've been saying it wrong the whole time. It's Kamala.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're done.
You misogynist.
You're canceled.
I am.
Your TikTok's
definitely
canceled.
If our talk is that she's just a backwards, ignorant woman.
Nobody said that.
Okay?
No one said
an
she's a
unqualified woman
She
who
didn't.
slept her way to the top.
Brock didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You're only being the straw man here to a much larger argument.
No. We're not being straw man. This is how we feel. Like Brock's, if you think that the large majority of men who would not vote for Kamala Harris it's because she's an uneducated woman who doesn't deserve to be there, whether she's good enough for the job or not, that is not how I feel. That's not how Brock feels.
That's fair.
So
I would understand that.
The argument made here
that's not how anybody feels.
I don't know anybody that feels that way. I
don't know anybody that feels that way.
Would say she's a woman, and that's like it's because she's a woman, or that seems absurd.
This is the problem when you start to get into identity politics, and everything that somebody says that a criticism of somebody of a minority is misogynistic, racist, whatever you want to put in there.
No.
If you're speaking against somebody in the LGBTQ group, then you're a bigot.
If this were true, Trump would have won by more than 5 million votes. I think it's a loud minority. I haven't yet seen anybody who said I'm not voting for her because she's a woman. Yeah, which is
Are those people out there? Probably, but the burden is not on me to prove that. The burden is on you to prove that, because you just made the accusation to a general population of men, which isn't fair and isn't backed up by any reasonable data.
and should not be used as an indictment against voting for Donald Trump, in my opinion,
Yeah. The only
or for voting
pushback
for Donald
to
Trump, I
that
should say.
is with his behavior coupled onto that,
Yeah.
it leaves you in a very vulnerable position right here.
Not if you're looking at it objectively, objectively like we are, where if your concern is how well are they going to do at the job, not what have they done to showcase their ability to do the job. Trump did a better job. And he's also got 4 years of experience, which, whether he did a good job then or not, unless you're Jimmy Carter, is a bit of a resume that's hard to beat.
Yeah. Jimmy Carter.
And you also can't make the idea, you can't make the argument two ways that while she was vice president, they don't really do anything, but also her resume should show you something. You can't have both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Of that. I mean,
If I could prove to a if I knew, somebody who felt the way that you said your daughter feels, I don't want to. Yeah, if I could prove to somebody like that that the first 4 years where America was better and he did a great job, would it change how they feel about me not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris because I don't think she's qualified or skilled, and she didn't convince me that she was? Because you're saying the argument is not, it's that Donald Trump's not a better alternative. But he's not a great guy, but he did a better job. So where's the line?
I mean, some of it depends what you...
It's assuming intent and motive, and you can't do that. That's
I guess
the point.
I would tell this story, if I get to the excuses for Donald Trump in separating his policy from his actions, right in there is the rub every time.
Yeah,
it really is.
You had the Kamala Harris campaign was putting out advertisements telling women to secretly vote for whoever they wanted, insinuating
to lie to your husband,
insinuating because there's risk of domestic abuse and this and that. What an awful.
But forget about policy positions
message.
too. If you want to start talking about women's reproductive rights, is a good way to put it. At least that's the way it's framed. Then I would say that you have, or whoever would support her, has a big problem.
Yeah.
So are they really that different?
On
their morals, what they're willing to say.
On that, they're different.
In what way?
Well, his wife. Okay, what has Donald's position been on that?
On what?
Divorce?
On
the
reproductive
nuclear
rights.
Oh, okay.
What could you articulate? What his position is?
I think he's made it pretty clear he believes it's a state issue.
Okay, and what does that mean to you?
Actually, he would be more center left on the abortion issue.
I don't think he has any intention of making it a federal problem.
He has made it clear that he's in favor of exceptions.
Yeah.
Some of these other, would you say, more progressive values or progressive leaning values versus traditional conservatism.
But policy-wise, what I care about in the president at this point, when there's only two options, is that policy-wise, despite his beliefs, he has repeated over and over again, it is the state's job to decide.
Is that the way forward you want, or do you want a national ban?
Every single president has personal feelings, but they don't advocate for that on the federal level. He's no different. There's not been a single president, George Washington, right off the bat. You know how many things he probably thought were best, but thought it's not the government's job to decide. Yeah. Every president has at least one thing like that. You can't say just because he thinks that he shouldn't be president.
This kind of brings me back, though, to the point of law. And when we come back to this, in this group, I would actually articulate an abortion plan. I don't want to make abortion illegal. I think that's a bad idea. I would like to make late-term abortions illegal. I would like to have changed the law around abortion, that you have to have an ultrasound before you have an abortion. That's the single thing I would change about an abortion.
So getting back to supporting a candidate then who doesn't agree with that, who says right up until birth is the Democrat platform, is her campaign's platform. So like at what point can we...
It believes it's the federal government's job to make that happen.
Correct. And facilitate that. Yeah. So one side on this particular issue seems like, let the states decide. I don't really want anything to do with it. The people who are out there saying he's going for gay marriage, he's going to take that away. He's taking away all reproductive rights across the federal stage. It's not true. It's not true. But I think morally what we're kind of talking about more so is that's a policy argument versus a personality argument. Mm-hmm. So there's tons of stuff with Trump I don't like. There's also tons of stuff that's my judgment that's not for me to do. And then there's also the side where the policies, the man might not be the carrier you want. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But if the cargo he's carrying is good cargo, then perhaps there's a...
What cargo is good?
Well, if we're talking about as Christians, what are some things that we should care about? Everything we've talked about up until this point.
And in any of them, what's he going to do that's better? Like, anything we talked about, he's not going to do anything about fuel prices.
Sometimes it's what you don't do. Donald Trump being in office the next 4 years is another 4 years that less babies die in the womb because of abortion. Who knows what happens if we get Kamala Harris is president for the next 4 years. We don't know. Like the rhetoric is that they would like to change that.
It's very simple, and that is that most babies that get killed in the womb get killed because the mother has no options.
There's something I can agree with that, but there is something funny, not hilarious, but funny as in weird and ambiguous that makes people really suspicious about that kind of thing. When it just happened a few days ago, 10 states made decisions on abortion law. New York's extremely ambiguous. The language that they used in the bill that passed that made abortions up to whatever is extremely ambiguous language. The fact that they word the stuff that way, I understand that people are suspicious.
It has to be ambiguous because see, when you make laws that are clear about something like abortion, then IVF or whatever the next thing or whatever situation doesn't apply. And your position is you'd love for the federal government or the state government to have the right answer all the time. And I just don't think government is capable of that.
Yeah,
in a place that's that
the idea
sensitive.
is to decentralize it from a single source and have people have a more active role in how they want to live and what rules they want to live by. That's the whole point of sending it from the federal to the state level.
And when you have one side that is saying we need to return it to a federal issue, we need bigger government, a lot of people don't want that. And so abortion also, aside, any issue, smaller government, that's my vote. Is there anything wrong with that?
Smaller government.
Decentralized government. Is that not a valid voting issue? Voter issue?
I think it's valid.
whether it's abortion or gun laws or the price of the corporate profit. If it's the government's job to take care of it, I want decentralized government. Like that alone, is that not a valid reason to vote one way or the other? You're wrong if you're voting for this person because of how he is and how I see him on TV. Like, isn't it okay for people to vote for the issues that they care about still, even in this election, when both of the candidates have their serious moral flaws? Can we just return to what are the issues?
Yeah.
There's only two choices. What would you do?
Or just compare policies.
Right, same thing. Yeah. What would you do? There's only two choices. What would you suggest?
Okay. So when I was a kid, I just turned 14 and we started youth group. And we were at youth group that one night, and another kid had just bought a Mustang Mustang Fox body, and he brought it. And it had that Calvin and Hobbes character pissing on the Ford or on the Chevy symbol on the back of it.
Is that Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah,
or is
Calvin, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I thought that was so funny.
It
when I would
was.
see him on the back of cars.
So it was there, and we all came out after youth group, and we're looking at the car, and as a 14-year-old, we were just fascinated. And the guy had just got it, like that day, and the youth group leader just started in on him about that and how that was a bad witness for Christians, and that was a bad look. I believe Donald Trump is so much worse of a look, and that guy is supporting him today. And my argument is his look is so bad, guys, so bad. Mm-hmm. Like,
I don't think
whatever you do for Christianity, whatever you believe in, like, please differentiate. Like, you got to say it. Yeah. Donald Trump is a piece of crap.
Yeah, so does that mean you can't vote for him? Or does that mean you can't?
If you do, please say, I voted for him. Mm-hmm. He's a piece of crap.
Yeah, so
boys, listen up. Don't be like Donald Trump. Don't cheat on your first wife with your second wife. Don't, like...
Yeah, okay, hold on.
Morally, that's where I'm at.
Sure.
He is completely out of the bounds.
Yeah, this is the real heart of your issue is that he has been raised up by a certain segment of Christianity as he's the next best thing in the Christian world, and he's not. Mm-hmm. And Christians need to stop carrying him around on his golden throne.
Okay, so do you want to know how many people I know that feel that way?
How many?
Almost nobody. Maybe a couple people who are saying God has placed him here.
Not righteous.
He's righteous. Like one of us. God has lifted him up. He's a perfect being.
Anointed and appointed.
Use their position to articulate to my daughters that he's a piece of crap.
Would you like me to go into more detail? Because, for about the last probably hour, I think we've said that multiple times, how much we disagree with him and don't like a lot of what he is.
Articulate to young men
not to be like that.
Just for the record, why you shouldn't be like Donald Trump. Because when we do lift leaders up, they get our seal of approval irregardless, to some degree or another. Unless
so what if
articulate.
So what if that degree is on policy and not personality? Does that codify it for you?
It codifies it a little, and I'm beginning to understand the policy and the anger around whatever perceived Biden did or didn't. But that anger, that dissatisfaction with the status quo is the fuel that brought him to winning. I wouldn't have grasped that as much 3 days ago. I do see that clearer now, that is the engine of him winning. But I wouldn't look at any young man and tell him you should emulate Donald Trump in dang near anything he's done. I mean, really anything. Like, and then I know that you've looked past that for me personally, I can't. I won't. I morally, I find it too repugnant. I don't say that I say I feel bad about that, of where we are, but I don't. And there's this argument that I don't understand who he is or whatever.
Ugh.
I have studied it enough. I've read Art of the Deal. I don't perceive myself as being misled by media to have been judging him harshly.
Yeah, so I would agree with a lot of what you said. Like, not a great guy. I felt that way in 2016. I did not vote for him in 2016 for the same reasons that you. He had no resume. He had nothing going for him at that point, aside from Drain the Swamp, which is really attractive to some people. But I looked at him the same way that you look at him. Like, this guy is not a good dude. Like, there are, like, why would I? There wasn't great options then either, so I voted third party. So I understand. I definitely understand your perspective. Give him 4 years. Gave him 4 years. Economy did well. Goes back to that basic question of, are we better off now than we were 4 years ago? That alone is a resume enough for a lot of people who maybe didn't vote for Trump in 2016 to vote for him again in 2024. Now, so it's not about, oh, we like the guy. First of all, we don't know him. So when you're saying that you've seen enough of him to know that he's not a good guy, it's hard to make the, well, you don't know him argument, because he's been all over TV for the last 8 years. So at some point, it's almost like, yeah, maybe there is some wisdom, and like, you don't really need, there's wisdom and you don't know him, but you see enough of him and there is wisdom. Like, yeah, you've seen enough. I've seen some good things, but the good things are still, to me, in the category of, you don't really know him, because yes, the immorality does far outweigh the morality to a certain degree. But that's not why people, in a system where there's only two options, that's not why people vote. The issue is...
I will push back right here a little bit.
Go ahead.
That man who stood there and chewed that boy for that stupid bumper sticker on that car, and I'm picking on him, but that place was, the jump from that to supporting him is a rough jump.
Not supporting him, but supporting what people may feel is the best route for the country. And the country doesn't run on feelings. The country runs on the economy, foreign affairs, borders.
Yeah.
Well, what were the three? Everybody got polled. What were the three biggest things that everybody looked at? It was those three things.
Yeah.
It didn't say
price of groceries,
whose personality is more moral. We're not allowed to. We don't really have the opportunity to vote specifically on that. We don't.
And that is the problem. Unfortunately, right. I understand exactly where you're coming from. There is a segment of Christianity that needs to stop lifting him up to a place where he does not belong.
Yep.
But then we go back to, well, you got two people to vote for, so you have to make a decision. Like, is there room for Christians to make a decision without
being judged?
No, is there room for, but is there room for Christians to support him without supporting him the way that you're implying we're supporting him?
I guess in a winner-take-all election where every soundbite matters, I don't know. Can you support him without supporting him? Or can you...
What would you do? What would you suggest? Because Brock is right. We can't just vote for whoever we want. It doesn't work. So what would you suggest? What would you do? Is there?
I mean, I can tell you what
options are clear. It's not vote. It's vote third party. It's like what's the realistic?
What's the realistic? I mean, I would personally advocate for the exact opposite of this election, that maybe Trump needed to get trounced, and maybe that could lead to better candidates being viable. Yeah. But at this point,
At
this point, I mean, at this point, all bets are off. It's all legal. It's all rubbing his race, and let's do this every 4 years.
Right. Correct. Okay. Great. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying vote third party or don't vote at all. Don't reward either candidate, and maybe we'll get better candidates in the future.
That would actually be the only way forward that sounds positive to me.
And you think enough people? Great idea. Do you think enough people will follow that same principle enough to actually make it? That's like voting third party to some people. It's never going to work.
That question is always the same question if you're trying to change a system. And I don't know how you change a system. Because frankly, I'm fairly despondent about changing a system. Mm-hmm. I really am. Like, my resistance for Trump is, I have as much for the other side. They didn't see as yeah.
Basically, you're saying show displeasure with both candidates, and maybe they'll put forth better candidates. The American people need to show their displeasure with either candidate.
Any candidate.
That's the moral. The moral.
The truth is, I was happy for the people, the Democrats that didn't vote because of Gaza and trying to make their voice heard. And okay, if you expect change, how do you do it? Like, you guys both think you can vote and change it. Nothing has changed in my lifetime, guys. Nothing.
Gas prices have gone up.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
It changed in the last 4 years. What do you mean nothing's changed?
We're still arguing about frickin' abortion. Like, we haven't compromised or come to any commonality or any kind of freaking movement forward.
Are you saying generally speaking? Or are you talking about at this table?
Oh, no, I'm talking generally speaking in the electorate.
Because I think that's a good point. And I think that, like, if we could get to a commonality where we realize, okay, abortion's not a good thing. Nobody thinks it's a good thing.
That would be, okay, instead of fighting against trying to change a law, how about just ask for the woman to look at the baby?
Right.
Like, is that so wrong? I think that to be my position?
No.
That I would like her to just look at the baby. And I don't need to have a policeman come in and frick you up because you're going to do a stupid thing. And maybe it's murder. And my plan for you is to dance with your wife when you find out you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Unfortunately, that's a barrier to reproductive health, depending on who says it. And the problem is society has gone downhill enough that that's the issue.
The barrier to reproductive health is just, please look at the baby.
Yes. No, I think it's a great idea, but I think it's a bit, I wish that could happen, but it will never happen.
If you want to murder, I can't keep you from murdering. I can't. You know you can't. You can't keep them. You can punish some things at less than 3 months. Do I really? Is it the same if a woman takes Plan B as if she's on the pill and a fertilized egg doesn't hit the wall? Like, I don't know. Tomato.
So I think it's a great idea, but if we're looking at realistic solutions, I'm on your side on this one.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at practical, real life, realistic solutions, I wish that were, hope I eat my words one day. I wish that were a practical, real life solution. But in real life, politics says that that's a barrier to reproductive health, and the left will never say put an ultrasound in front of an abortion procedure, and the right will never say let's make it legal if we put an ultrasound in front of it.
Yeah, and that is the breakdown of the system and whole. Where it's just such a stupid little small thing that both sides would fight like it, and I don't know. Like, that's the conversation.
Yeah. So is it hopeless to you, and that's why you don't feel like there's a point in voting?
It is very. I mean, in regards, my fight is always with hopelessness, as far as like. You guys want me to be happy that Donald Trump won and he's going to bring us to national
I don't
Christianity?
know. I didn't say that. It's a solemn win. I think Brock would agree. Like, we're not out bragging on the streets. Like, it's a rough win.
You might have. I would hope that we're not outliers in the movement. I know many people who are MAGA will follow him no matter what, and he feels
how uncomfortable are you with? We got to bring this 30% of MAGA along with us to win. There's about 10 of that 30% that's like, whoa, dudes.
Okay, so what percentage of the Democrat Party is okay with murdering a child up until birth?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to know what that number is?
Probably 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's the moral qualm?
It's there. Yeah.
So I think that the right argument is just like you're saying, like, perhaps we can have some normalcy and have a seat at the table for people of different walks to come together and figure out.
If he won, how's that bringing us back to normalcy?
No, I'm just talking about the general issue at large, because you're talking, like when you were talking your abortion positions, I think Nick and I would both agree with most of that.
No, it's not the right or wrong. It's just a middle ground to possibly.
Exactly. Like, what's a net win?
Yeah, what's a net win?
After
not killing some babies
after 20 weeks,
win.
After 20 weeks, after whatever, like,
yeah,
I have my personal opinions about it, but as far as when it comes to policy and what the federal government should be involved in, I'm pretty libertarian when it comes to most of that stuff.
Well, and I get the feeling from some of Christianity that they're really into a law to go make this nation moral. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, it's not a root cause issue. It's more like a deterrence issue.
Bigger stick issue.
Do you not believe that laws can be deterrents if you're fighting for life?
I believe they can be deterrents. I am scared of the law as like a big stick that's supposed to be blind, and it hits everything.
Yeah.
If it's applied good, it hits everything. And there are a lot more gray exceptions movement than that. And maybe about life that is not true. Like in reality, I'm not saying there's a lot of gray about alive or dead.
Yeah, well, we're talking 10 Commandments here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that it's unreasonable for Christians to want a law that may save a baby. Now, we could get into maybe the church isn't doing enough, and I completely agree. Like,
you're on that boat?
That the church isn't doing enough?
Yeah.
With like abortions and like helping mothers and
yeah. Okay. See,
do you think the church does enough? Do you think that foster care should be a thing, or do you think that's the church's job ultimately?
I don't want to hear you complain about abortion unless you've got the scars of fostering kids. That's where, but I'd go along with that. Like, I'm a little crazy.
I'm not talking necessarily about individuals either. I'm talking about the church.
Yeah.
I'm talking about not putting up multi-million-dollar buildings while people are on the side of the street. I'm talking about as a collective, maybe that's more practical. And I don't know that most people don't know what people's scars are. So that's another judgment.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like, you don't know like where people are from and what they've gone through and how they were raised. So what we can do as a church,
the church puts its energy into, and like CareNet or Planned would be one of those things that I've watched it now for 25 years. And man, we give to it, we spend a lot on it, but it's so terribly ineffective. Like, it just doesn't.
And by what metrics? If it saved one life, like, what metrics are we talking about? Are we talking about like efficiency per dollar? Or are we talking about?
I am talking about if
women that were.
Yeah.
That's not a numbers argument, obviously.
We put our energy into rural communities. And I would argue the data I have seen 100% says instead of staffing and spending this ridiculously expensive thing, granted, I do believe ultrasounds make a difference if you can get a mom to see an ultrasound. But
Is that just your thought, or do you have like?
No, that's pretty good data. If she sees,
I would assume
if she sees an ultrasound,
or how about even like a
heartbeat, any of those things,
or a procedure. Like, go ahead and show somebody a procedure of abortion being done and tell me that doesn't tug on your heartstrings.
Yeah, that'll give you nightmares and be bad.
That's interesting.
But my position would be that
those are just dollars not spent well.
Not spent well
and
at all.
how could we spend them better?
We could just pay any woman who is under 25 $10,000 for a live birth. Because it would make life a little easier. And turns out, if moms have choices and money, the only reason they're killing babies is because they don't have any options. Or whatever options. Some of it can be selfish. There's a small degree of selfishness, but...
What percent?
How many of those, okay, you just said, okay, how many of the amount of, what percentage of abortions do you think are cases like that where it is a conscious choice, not a medical decision because there's a life at stake? Like what we were saying earlier. A by choice abortion. Now it's, at what percentage do you think?
Most of them are by choice.
Like not by choice, but not inhibited by, not inhibited, but the opposite of that. Not made because of a circumstance. It's just pure choice. I can't afford it. I'm not ready. Is that such a small percentage? Because now it sounds like it's not.
No, that's a higher percentage.
Okay.
That's a bad position.
That's murder.
I thought that you just said that was a small percentage before.
I thought so too.
Okay. No,
because the medical necessity for an abortion, we know that's
barely ever happens.
A fraction of a percent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
not that it doesn't happen.
It happens. It happens a fraction of the percent of the time.
Yeah.
Which is not how it's advertised. That is the majority of them. If you ask the people who would like to make it a federal wide.
Sure.
That's murder, correct? Abortion by choice with no other circumstance involved in making in that choice being made, that's murder.
The only pushback to that,
as Christians, we would believe that. Not on a governmental level.
If your scientific understanding is that it starts at conception, that it would be murder. I mean, murder. Mm-hmm. There are other cultural.
And you don't think
there are other traditions that would say life would begin a little bit different.
Of course, and you don't. So if we all see now, if we all agree that that's a large portion of abortions, whereas Christians we would think that's murder. You don't think that if it's such a large percentage of the abortions taking place in America, that's not a worthy voters issue, in that voting for somebody like Donald Trump, who you know is not going to make abortions more widespread, based on many times he's mentioned it, that's not a good enough reason as a Christian to vote for Donald Trump. We all just admitted that it's a large portion of abortions. We all agree it's murder. We have one candidate who wants to make it federally legal. We have another candidate who has never expressed that. You think it's wrong to vote that direction. We all agree on those things.
No, we all agree.
And that his morality is less of an issue as his policy stance.
We're agreeing. I'm going to just repeat your position back to me. Mm-hmm. You're saying abortion is murder.
In the circumstance that we just agreed is the majority case of abortions, that it is purely a choice. Like, I can't afford it. It's not like a medical decision. It's not, life isn't at risk.
I think I was advocating for it is murder.
At a minimum.
It is murder.
At a minimum.
But what I was advocating for was it is not murder chosen in a vacuum. It's not like, oh, let's murder somebody today.
It's because it's culturally not framed that way. It's framed as women's health versus killing a baby. So,
But not to you, though. You're saying...
No, I'm saying...
It's not the same thing.
I'm saying the choice being made there is to murder or not to murder. Mm-hmm. I am saying in that choice, her ability to make any other choice is directly related to how much support and money she has. Like the ability that it isn't always murder.
it kind of gets into dicey territory because now it becomes the position of, if you can't afford it, murder's okay.
And I would argue that
a
woman with no income.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we are the richest nation the world has ever seen. And we're sending our apologies to make this woman make that choice. Like, we just spent how much money bombing the crap out of somebody somewhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can afford $20,000 for a new mom for a live baby every single time.
Yeah, right.
And that would be a policy that in fact saved lives. It didn't make it so you had to make everything illegal.
Right. So we do have that system is in place. It may be antiquated and it doesn't work, but I think the government has tried before they're all of a sudden so pro-abortion, at least half of them are. We tried to incentivize. There's food stamps, there's housing, like they'll give you free everything.
The United States has a very well-funded safety net in a variance of ways.
New York's safety net in no way resembles Florida's safety net.
In which way? In New York is better?
New York is way
New York has
better.
Good. But okay, that's a state issue.
An incomeless woman is not a woman with no income.
So you would say no woman in America is
poorest
destitute
person in America,
and they should be okay.
No,
we're generous enough. And
I'm only saying that I think that the government has tried exactly what you're saying. Okay. It just might not be working anymore. Like maybe there could be a more direct system of like getting funds to these women, which I just think that it's been tried.
I think maybe the church should have a more direct system of getting funds to a woman.
That's what I was talking about before.
That was actually what I was arguing. Instead of care net, I was saying I would be voucher it.
Yeah.
Or, we could do a different thing, but. And it becomes a little weird because you're paying for a baby, but they're alive.
Yeah, it gets weird. But no, I think that I've looked at it before and thought that like I could totally envision like a church having a building next to the church that is fully funded and has rooms and food and resources for people who are struggling. I mean, this goes across the board, but especially in this area where you have the opportunity to influence somebody's life.
And I don't know.
It is hard. It is hard because obviously nobody wants harm to these women and the children should they choose them to be born. Yeah. Nobody wants harm for them. And it's not saying that they are not the poorest people in America is not a compliment.
Yeah.
Their lives still stink. They're living in poverty. It's not a good way to live. It's not ideal, but they're not living on So I want to ask you real quick: what's it like in a state like Florida where you've lived, you've got firsthand experience? How is it different? A woman is pregnant, has a child in Florida, has no income, they have nothing. What same person in New York? What are their experiences like getting funding from the government? Do you know?
I do not.
In a more conservative state, what's it like? How hard is it?
I have not I have not lived that.
Okay, I would love to know.
What I would say is my observations of it is that the blue states,
of course,
are 100% kinder, gentler, more generous, and the dichotomy is different. Like that judgment in the South is alive and well, and I 100% would rather be a single mother in Minnesota or New York State than I would in Mississippi.
I would be interested to know exactly what it's like because we live in a state where like a lot of, it's very easy to get
Here,
access.
it can be a little.
It's pretty good.
You're not sure if it's too good because the incentive to move to the next step seems to be lacking sometimes.
Right.
And
Well, it's probably because it is too good. I think it's pretty obvious, don't you?
I guess the only thing I would argue with that is sometimes the next step takes away so much that you almost have to get 3 steps to be ahead. Mm-hmm. So I think it needs to be slower graduated, but a more clear path.
So under the assumption that 25 of the 50 states in America, it is not easy. Like the money is not there like it is in New York or other states that are very liberal with their public funding.
I mean, I think it's northern states also because the dynamics of freezing to death.
Yeah.
Like nobody's in favor of that.
Right.
Like that's bad. You know, you can just be poor and sit in your palmetto bush in Florida.
Yeah. There are definitely, it's not like the entire country is insulated from. There are places that experience much more poverty, and they do need help. And I agree, churches could step up in a big way. I think churches write big checks to CareNet, places like that, and that's what they see as their donation, like their help. And is that the best way? Is that the best place for that money to go? I don't know.
I personally,
it's hard to know too that just throwing money at an issue fixes it, because we know for a fact that it hasn't worked with the war on crime, war on poverty, war on drugs. We've thrown trillions of dollars at it. No better, if not worse. Yeah. So it's hard just from a logical perspective. Okay, we can give them funds and then they can do whatever they want with it versus could we put programs in place that would run well? Who knows? Probably not.
Yeah, there's too many people on this planet and there's too little trust in the individual's ability to steward these funds for people. Like everything's wrapped up in organizational hierarchy now. Like that money 200 years ago, the community would get a pig for the person in their village that needed it. Nowadays,
somebody's got to administer it.
It's got to funnel through an organization somehow, and you're hard up to see. Yeah. This is probably not. Should be really careful.
How far in are we?
Far.
Yeah, we can wrap it up here. Yeah. But I think we should be really careful saying that churches don't write checks to people. They do,
or Christians.
Yeah, even Christians outside of their church making decisions to give to people that are in need,
and whatever that looks like.
Very prevalent.
Yeah.
And whatever it looks like, whether it's a check or it's their help or it's food,
bringing
meal.
somebody into their home.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but in general, for some reason, our society has grown to such a size, and also, again, not trusting how people steward the money that they're given, that money's got to funnel through some organization. And what does that look like? That looks like one big organization writing a check to a smaller organization who then decides what to do with it. And the question is always, is this the best way to spend our money?
Now, I do have a side question.
Inefficiencies exist at every part, and then it just trickles down to, is it working or not?
In my desire to have consequences for actions, do you think it would be unfair or fair to just say I'm going to start swearing for the next 4 years?
Would I say it's fair?
Fair or unfair?
What does fair mean?
Well, do you think it's I'm very dissatisfied with the acceptance of Donald Trump. And I want a marker that has pain associated to it for the church, for people.
Something you think Donald Trump would say?
I'm trying to follow. So you want retribution for the church supporting Donald Trump? And where is that coming from?
I would like.
Wait, hold on.
Who's the
Where's
church?
that coming from?
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
I would like to have the conversation more about how it's okay, how it's not okay for me to swear, but it's okay for Donald Trump to do everything he does.
Yeah, I would ask that same question to people who really believe that he was.
And my protest of that is just, and this idea, to be perfectly fair, is probably already vetoed by my wife, but it was an interesting thought process to me that would be a active resistance to Donald Trump and his positions and personality.
I'm trying to still get my head around it.
Yeah, can you paraphrase? Can you explain it to us like we're 5?
Then he explains it. Can you explain it like we're 3?
So the morality of Donald Trump I found repulsive.
Okay,
so
tracking.
Taking on a repulsive behavior myself, aka swearing,
to counteract the other
as a protest that is visible and annoying.
Just to get the response from Christians who support somebody who does the same thing.
And I think it would help communicate the depths of my distaste for the man in a way that put it in front of people every time I saw them.
You want to give them the taste of their own medicine.
Part of me wants that, but the other part of it is just a reminder of this is where we are. Like, this is where we live now. You brought us here.
I would argue that they would look at you and say, no, I didn't vote for that. I voted for his policies.
Yeah.
You don't have to act like that. We can all
Yeah.
be
So
fine.
wait. So when can the moral consistency be the argument for that?
It's an interesting question.
Well, let me pose it to you this way: how much agency do we have over the correction of others and their moral intentions, and how much of that is God's job? And then secondarily, how much are you letting that infect you to blacken your own heart toward other people? And where does the individual heart lie?
It's probably already there some, and I probably need to work on it.
Yeah, who hasn't experienced that? But
I am considering as many direct action ways to combat what I view as Donald Trump. Whether that's giving to immigration lawyers that will directly target him and his policies as it comes up, this is not just I'm unhappy with Donald Trump. I genuinely think that he's a terrible man, and that whatever you think his policies are, that I think 50% won't be there in 2 years.
50% of the policy.
No, 50% of the people that you think you voted for won't be there in 2 years.
Oh, the cabinet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's possible.
Right. I think
I think it's huge. Yeah, it's an important one.
Okay, so then I guess the barometer would be, how can you protest in a godly manner? Now you're...
Can you protest in a godly manner?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't think you can?
Man, anytime I get involved in conflict,
I think this has been good.
I usually end up sinning pretty quick.
I think this has been great.
Yeah.
I'm losing my voice. I've got a little sore throat, but
Well-
I think this has been, why can't it? Yeah. Discourse, honest discourse where there's no, like, we're rational people who are not going to like get upset at your opinion or anybody else's opinion.
Discourse is
unless they're hurting people, or that's pretty much it. But like
hurting people unless they're deporting them.
That's not the position that we had, actually.
That's not
a lot of your points. That you made good points on immigration, to be fair.
Yeah.
We did not dispute any of those.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You didn't.
Okay. So this is part of the problem. When you see the supporters of somebody you don't like through a certain lens, you start to project your own animosity towards the man to his supporters.
But I don't know how to sit 10 toes down saying I resist this.
I think just like
without doing that. Because
well, you have to find a way to do it in a way that is not displeasing to the Lord that you serve and have committed to. But if that can be achieved, I find your level of citizenship admirable, and I don't care who you vote for. I wish every voter felt as strongly as you do.
Yeah.
That would be great if we all felt like we cared about the issues.
Yeah.
And we're informed about the issues, which you clearly are.
Even though for you this is a morality thing, we talked about enough things like the border and all. Like you do have a pulse on the issues, and you do clearly care about them. You wouldn't know about them if you didn't. You know more than the average person. Yeah. No matter how you feel or how we feel, I think that you're a model for what the average citizen should be like if they're going to vote. Like, just know something and care a little bit. So I commend you for that, and I love talking to you about it.
Yeah. I don't know. That's where I find myself, because I have faith that the police aren't going to go through with Donald's plan, but I don't have any faith that he doesn't have a bad plan.
We'll find out.
And bad motives.
I find that it's going to be hard to pull that off in our country.
It will be.
Even if he did.
It will be, but man, the exaltation of self with no humility that I have seen exercised anywhere just seems scary.
Understandable.
We don't know what happens with him behind doors. We don't know his heart behind doors. It's hard to say the pulse. We can look at his actions on a screen and his arrogance and everything like that for sure.
Yeah.
Which we apply that same theory to the other side, which in this case happens to be Kamala Harris. I've seen tons of good things from her. Like, I'll see a random video where she like hugs a person. I think that's great. Like, she's a real boots on the ground. But it's the policy where it went sideways. But we apply that same logic to her. We don't know her behind closed doors, but that's not what's important to us.
Yeah, people who are saying one side's evil and I don't subscribe to that. Yeah. I don't. It's hard.
That was not
I don't have my pulse
in the church I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, that is the switching sides that I have done, to the evangelical church I grew up in. I am a heretic. Don't be fooled. You can't be anything but Republican.
That's wrong. Yeah, I mean, that's just wrong.
So some of my animosity is all the way back from that. I mean, from, America didn't have a rebellion because it was God ordained, like that type of teaching. To say that, though, I have had to push back that I don't believe God can work through Donald. I should clarify this.
How dare you?
God can work through Donald Trump. He can work through Kamala Harris. I personally would have preferred he worked through a sinner like Kamala Harris, because then it would be clear that what God did and not what Donald Trump did. Because I think some of you people are going to get it confused or twisted.
You can't keep saying you people.
You people. Yeah. You
Stop
people in
othering
my
us.
comments.
Stop othering us.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
You people in my
I
comments.
forget. There's you people, the audience, the camera.
Everybody's going to think you're just yelling at us this whole time.
Yeah. Well, it got a little tense. We did good.
Yeah, we did good.
That was nothing.
I want to say something real quick. I think that people need to take a step back from politics, and this is on both sides. I don't think that this is the last election we're ever going to have. You know, like this is all the rhetoric and all the stuff needs to just not be, it just needs to be knocked off. I also do believe God can work through anybody. Fair enough. You think that, you know, if you think that the morals of one person are better than the other and that would have been a better conduit, that's fine. That's, you know, I
think the morals are worse. It would have been a clearer conduit, not a confusing one to people.
Okay.
That's actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that a wild position?
Yeah. It's hard to, it may be a little bit hard to reconcile the rationale there.
Yeah.
Just because then who's doing the moral judging?
Yeah.
I think we're all pretty dirty rags.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we're going to be fine. And I agree with you. I don't think the police and the military are going to do anything. They took an oath to a constitution, not to a person. And I think most people take that very seriously. And I hope so. And I honestly do think that you would see some serious pushback. And I'll just be honest with you. I'm not a MAGA guy. I'm not a always Trumper. No. You know, I'm not like, I will push back against things I don't like. And we've done plenty of that here for sure.
We had a chance to wear MAGA hats on this.
Oh, son of a gun. But like, and it's good for everybody to keep me accountable on where I stand too, because if that comes to pass, then you better believe I'll be on the other side of that for sure.
100%. Yeah. It's fun to be like winning the elections, like winning the Super Bowl. Everyone,
really kind of,
you know, like, yeah, you walk around MAGA baby. Yeah. But like, you got to be able, I think you have to be able to separate the vocal minority from really how people feel, and that most are reasonable.
You think most people feel a little dirty with their win? That's what you're saying?
I think that.
What do you mean? What do you mean dirty?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
A little dirty.
I'm glad you said that because I do
bloody.
Like a little bad taste in their mouth.
That the normal, the quiet majority, they've got brains and they understand. With most wins comes some sacrifice, and that's what I believe. I believe that there's a quiet majority. I believe in the vocal minority. I just do.
Well, it definitely is what wags the tail of the dog.
Well, it's what hits the algorithms. It's outrage. It's. Yep. I think that the more that we can get removed from that kind of stuff and start living out. I mean, nobody's perfect, so like there's plenty of room, dude. I'm telling you right now. It sounds to me like some of the stuff that you're dealing with about like, you know, wanting to have the retribution toward the church and show them this kind of stuff. It seems deeper seated to me.
There's a few scars there from my childhood, for sure. Whatever.
I can understand.
Growing up in the church.
And that's totally.
Yeah. It is what it is. And some of that is maybe but it is a valid question. So I would tell both of you this though. If you're not going to live a life of resistance, you are never going to be the type of people that shield when it really is bad, that shield people from from wrong. Like the understanding I have of history is to be a person who steps in and to be the Anne Franks of the world means your family was taking care of people long before it was illegal. Like none of us, up at the point where it's illegal or not, we don't make that decision. We live lifestyles of resistance to bad policy, to bad ideas. So I personally want to lead a lifestyle of resistance to anything that I perceive as a bad idea. That's not breaking the law exactly, but it is definitely resisting. And don't know that's what I want to end on. I'd rather end on what I expect. I expect God can use this for his glory too. And thank you for having this conversation with me. It's been the reason you don't discuss politics or religion is because it's personal and it's important and it brings up a lot of feelings, a lot of like value.
I think, the generation before us, I think from what I've experienced, you don't talk politics, but I think it's good. It's an exercise in maturity. And if you can talk politics, and it's fun, and a little, debates are fun. Like, every once in a while, a good discourse is a good debate or good discourse turns into a debate. It's fun. And for some reason, I don't understand. Yeah. The people, the generation before us that doesn't talk politics, it's to be comfortable. And I think it's just, like I said, it's a show of maturity. And I think only good can come from it if you allow it. Why not? Why shield it? Why not?
You don't think I'm just getting excommunicated?
No.
Won't allow it.
It's honestly like, if everybody thought that we all think the same and we're all clones, like, get over yourself. Of course we all have different thoughts and feelings. Like I said before, I wish people who did vote this year had the fervor that you have, and I think we'd be a better country for it, no matter what you voted. So
I think that the conversations and the debate you're talking about too, Nick, is not only, I guess, fun is the word you use. I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think that it actually is a way of friction to sharpen more or less
ideas.
Yeah. And especially if you can do it in a way that's loving, I think that's what everybody struggles with.
That's where the maturity comes along, I think.
And to find a balance to where you can affect change in somebody takes trust. It takes patience. It takes
all. And change is fascinating too, because the truth is, by having the conversation, it's not that change is usually degrees. It's not 90s.
Exactly. Yep.
It's a little more nuanced in a position. It's
right. Yeah. If you're out to change somebody's mind, that's not what I mean by affecting change. That's not what I mean.
It's looking for the little bits of wisdom and being receptive to it and being humble enough to think that you can actually learn from somebody. And
I've learned a lot.
I appreciate that about you too. Like,
I learned a lot tonight.
You are older than us. And you've got more life experience, and I appreciate your viewpoint a lot and being willing to hear.
I would have not. 100%. I have adjusted how I view you saying policy over personality to some degree. Like, I don't agree, but man, I just couldn't even get to trying to understand why you would want to think about his policies at all over his personality. Like, so that is fascinating to me in it. And it does, it creates more unity than it does not. Like, it's not actually that a different position. It's just a completely different way of looking at what the important thing is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I appreciate your wisdom and even being able to like look at it that way. I want to be like that too when I grow up. I try to be open.
You grow
like
up.
A lot of people can't be. A lot of
Dick, you're grown, man.
I shouldn't say. Yeah, I know. Someday when I grow up, I can't speak for people, but I think humility is a superpower and it's rare. And I just really appreciate the way that you think about what people say and like give it thought.
Yep.
And like that is a huge leap forward than a lot of people these days. So yeah.
Can we pray for wholeness for the church while we got just a minute?
100%. Yeah.
Because the truth is, in any of my conversation, while it might appear I'm tearing something apart to some people, my desire is goodness and wholeness. Dear Lord, come to this land. Show yourself powerful here among these people, among us. Lead and guide our leaders. Bring about a good plan. Thank you. Thank you for America. Thank you for this grand experiment. Thank you for the goodness that we do have here. Thank you for the principled people who care deeply. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, brother.
You're the man. Thanks for coming here. Again. Love to have you on again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it coming.
All right, folks. That's probably it for us. Yep. All right. We'll see ya.